Wait for that.
There we go.
Welcome, everybody. There we go. All right. Well, welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday, February 16th, Mardi Gras edition of the Brattleboro Select Board. We know the meeting has been properly warned because I confirmed that at 5:30 when we met briefly to go into a quick executive session with the town manager, the assistant town manager, and 4 board members. So our next order of business is going to be to approve the minutes of January 26th and the minutes of February 2nd, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes of January 22nd and February 2nd, 2021.
Thank you. Ian has moved to approve those minutes. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
That's 4-0. Thank you. Chair's remarks. I don't really have any prepared remarks. As I mentioned, this is Mardi Gras. So, and it's a nice moment to sort of celebrate life. We've had even more unfortunate deaths to some beloved community members, unfortunately. And it's just always something that I try to remind people to do, to celebrate life as we have it, because there's a lot of good out there. So to all of you, whether you are Team Ketchup or your Team Mustard, I wish you a very Fat Tuesday, happy Fat Tuesday out there. And that's it for Chair's remarks. Manager's comments is next.
Thank you. As I forewarned the chair, it'll be lengthier than usual tonight, so I apologize for that in advance. I've got 4 separate topics to address. The first is good news. We have received the quarterly transfer from the state of our local option tax receipts. And the figure for the sales tax for the second quarter of this fiscal year, this is the October, November, and December transactions, is $244,653, which is the highest quarter we've had yet in the sales tax receipts. Beats last quarter by $10,000. Last quarter used to be the highest quarter we had yet. So sales tax performed really well and far better than expected. The rooms and meals tax didn't. Remember that the budget for this year was established prior to COVID. So we're in this period of time where we've known for a long time these numbers were going to be way down, but they're still performing poorly against budget because of how old that budget was. And they are about $20,000 below last quarter. There's an important thing to remember about this. So we received $99,500 for July, August, and September, and $78,500 for October, November, December. I think it's really important for us to recall, it's kind of hard to remember as we gather on a rainy, raw February evening, after we've had plenty of snow in the last month. But back in the summertime, there actually was a fair amount of outdoor dining going on. So then the cold weather came and people had to go back just to curbside pickup. I don't know for sure the breakdown between the lodging part and the meals part and the alcohol part, but I believe just meals alone, it makes sense that there would be a drop off in the cold weather months. And so we did see that. If we're looking for a bright side, I think there is one, which is, we know we had been seeing significant increases in this revenue over the last several fiscal years. So this $78,500 number that compared to, current expectations looks pretty low, is actually what was the sort of normal quarterly amount that we were receiving as recently as 2015. So, given everything that's happened in the economy and in public health, not bad.
Liz?
Some of that revenue comes from Project Feed?
It doesn't actually, because the Project Feed is a government program. There's not taxes being paid on the Project Feed meals. We may have said early on that there would be tax receipts from that. I remember I was personally confused about that. I don't know whether we spoke about it publicly or not, but we've since confirmed that those are tax-free meals. It's still a win-win-win in terms of the folks who produce the food and the restaurants and the folks who need it and can eat it. But there is not rooms and meals tax on it.
Thank you.
Sure. So my second topic is, and each of the next three involves some degree of trying to clear up some confusion. And so that's why we're taking so much time with these tonight. And the first one relates to pay-as-you-throw garbage bags. So the purple bags, you know, with the smaller yellow and the larger purple, the purple ones, there was a snafu at the manufacturer a couple of weeks back, and they shipped to Brattleboro some purple bags that are marked Portland that were meant to go to Portland, Maine. So this is funny for most of us. It's not funny for the one group of people who filled purple bags and put them out at the curb the first time Triple T encountered these bags and said, I don't know who thinks they're cute, but we're not picking up Portland. So
Yeah, I saw that.
Triple T
I didn't hear about that.
understandably didn't pick it up. But then by the time it came to our attention, we were, you know, a day or two on, and they were on to the rest of their routes, right? So the rest of the cycle of how they perform their function for the town. So the answer for those people who were unfortunately the first to experience this is, we're sorry, but please hang on to those bags till your next time around, which is now a week away. It happened about a week ago. For everyone else, this is more humorous because it's been caught, it's been addressed by the manufacturer. Portland's aware of what went on, Brattleboro's aware of what went on, Triple T's aware of what went on. And so if you're a person in Brattleboro, we think it's all been, not all been, we think that to a great degree, the mistake got corrected in the supply chain, and there won't be all that many Portland bags in Brattleboro. But if you're somebody who bought a sleeve of Portland bags, or if there is still one out there and you buy one now, don't sweat it, fill it up with garbage and put it out at the curb. And even though it says Portland, you're good. You're participating in the program the right way, and your bag will be picked up. And we expect that the supply of Portland bags is relatively small and will be used up quickly, and we'll all get back to normal.
And they're collector's items now in Brattleboro. I do have a question though, Peter. It was asked, it was suggested that possibly these Portland bags are slightly smaller than our purples. Is that a possibility? Do you know?
That's the first I've heard. If it's true, I guess there's one more thing for us to look at. I don't want to shoot from my hip about what an appropriate response to that
They
would
look,
be.
visually, they look the same to me, but someone suggested that
That's
possibly.
something that'd be very easy for us to confirm yay or nay with the manufacturer. And I will say, you know, this was the manufacturer's error, and they were also really good about how responsive they were and how, you know, they threw out a lot that they discovered before it got distributed. And they also did or made arrangements of some kind with the folks who sell these bags in town for exchanging or whatever. I don't know all the details of that. What I know is Waste Zero, who is the supplier of these bags, was all over it the day that we called it out to them.
Ian.
Peter, is there in the future anything that we can do to try to have communication with Triple T if they see an irregularity with bags, so that we don't have customers who, at no fault of their own, are now stuck with garbage for 2 more weeks?
Yes. You know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in this system that we're more used to. And so that kind of communication does happen in real time. This was one where, you know, it was not the fault of the drivers that they saw some bags that looked odd to them, and so they left them, because their instructions are, you know, if it's Brattleboro yellow and a Brattleboro purple, you pick it up. If it's any other kind of bag, you don't.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
The next item is something that I know the select board members have all received a lot of communication about, and so have I. And so we just want to make sure that the community is informed of the facts related to the 2 school district questions that are showing up on the March 2nd ballot. The select board did not make a policy decision to put those items on the ballot. It's important for folks to understand that in the time when there was a town school district, the town ballot included things that were put there by the select board and things that were put there by the school. Now, under the consolidated regional school district, the regional school district has no authority to put anything on a local ballot. So when the regional school board decided to pose these 2 questions to the participating towns, they needed to ask the select boards in the participating towns to place the items on the ballot. The select board, the school board did ask us to do that. We looked at the question with Bob Fisher to make sure that we were advising you properly of this ministerial duty that you had that was not for you to decide, but for you to just assist the school board with. That is exactly the advice that I gave you based on my conferring with Bob about it. You said, okay, we'll do this thing that only we, the Brattleboro Select Board, can do for the Brattleboro ballot on behalf of the school board so that their question can be posed to the voters. And so you did that, and we warned the election, and there has been quite a lot of dialogue in the community around, whether even the asking of these questions is a good idea and how people should vote on it and so on and so forth. And there is continuing dialogue around that is substantive policymaking dialogue at the school board level. And that's where people ought to direct their communications on this matter, because even though some folks have come to the town and to the select board asking, why did you do this? The answer is because you were the only ones who could under the statutes, and you did as you were asked by the school board and as you were advised by me. So hopefully that's clear enough for the public, and those communications from here on towards March 2nd can be directed towards the school board.
Thank you, Peter. Liz?
Peter, if so that any explanatory matter about the pros and cons of this vote are to be presented by the school board, correct?
And members of the public, interested members of the public, but not by the town of Brattleboro.
And so do you know whether the school board will provide explanatory matter?
I don't.
All right.
One more?
Well, oh yes, Peter has one more. Thank you.
So just one more. Still in the continuing theme of the election. This one, unfortunately, we were directly involved in something that went wrong. So I want to explain what that was and what's been done about it and what people can do going forward. Just about the time that people were receiving the postcard that was encouraging folks to ask for absentee ballots. Just this happened like Wednesday, Thursday last week, that this was hitting people's mailboxes. And right at that time, we lost our town phones for 2 days. It was broader than just town phones. It was a first light problem in the system that affected quite a lot of other, at least corporate users and maybe personal as well. But it knocked out our town phones for a couple of days, right at the moment when a lot of people were trying to reach the town clerk's office. And the My Voter page, which is maintained by the state of Vermont, also went down. So the card is encouraging people to either call the town clerk's office or go to My Voter page. And people were striking out in both efforts through no fault of their own. There was a lot of frustration around that, understandably. We've heard a lot of communication from the public now that our phones are back up and through email to Hillary and her team. The good news is that the My Voter page is back up. As of this morning, it was back in service. So people who go to do this online should be able to do it in the way that they're instructed to by the card and by the instructions that are in the town's weekly update about COVID and in other places around related to the election. And if anybody has a question, a Brattleboro specific question, and you haven't had it satisfactorily answered, then you're invited to call the town clerk's office at 251-8157, 251-8157 for the town clerk's office, or email the town clerk directly at hfrancis, HFRANCIS @brattleboro.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We move on to fellow select board comments and committee reports. Anyone have anything for us? Daniel?
I mean, I was waiting for Ian, but it's fine.
Ian usually shoots in at the end there with his election.
Okay. Two-part comment. Part one, there is a traffic safety committee meeting this Thursday, 8 a.m. Agenda, backup material, and log in information on the town website someplace. And the second part, I want to just kind of publicly acknowledge all of the good work that's been going on from our public works department. There was a lot of snow removal going on over the last week, and in the years that I've lived here, this seems like the most intense effort to remove snow in one go that I've seen anyway. At least maybe it's just it hasn't happened like that in my neighborhood before, but you know, it was really wonderful and much appreciated, and I appreciate all of the work that folks have done to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
May I add something to what Daniel just said? I'm sorry, before we go on with other select board comments. So I appreciate, Daniel, your recognition of the crews, because it certainly has been a very challenging year. And then you get a storm like this one, right? At least when we get snowstorms, you know, there's a pretty well-oiled machine. Folks know how to deal with all that. This one that was, you know, there was some sleet and there was some rain, and then it was this slushy mess. It was very challenging. And now we're going to have a plunge in temperatures that's going to keep us below zero for about a week. And so I just ask that people understand, thank you for that praise for the team, because they certainly have earned it. And there's a mad scramble that's gone on in the last 24 hours to try to get everything as clear as possible before it all freezes. But there's going to be some places where it freezes and it's slippery, and we're all going to need to be paying attention to winter in Vermont and being careful and understanding that these crews have really done an outstanding job under terrible circumstances.
Thank you, Peter. And of course, you mean 0 Celsius, not 0 Fahrenheit. It's dropping below freezing.
Below freezing is what I meant. I guess I got a little carried away there.
Well, we've had enough of that below zero stuff for my taste this year, but already. Ian, did you have something?
Yeah, I will just very quickly supplement Peter with my traditional election discussion. So March 2nd, town meeting day, you can either request a ballot and mail it in, or go to the ballot box drop box that's in the municipal center parking lot. The My Voter page is available on a link in the news banner on the side of the Brattleboro website. It's a link that says request an early absentee ballot. There's no early in-person voting, so it's either that or go in person on March 2nd at the Legion. It'll be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I can speak from experience from the last elections that Hillary, town staff, and volunteers do a really excellent job at keeping things clean and safe. But we really encourage people to vote absentee to prevent large crowds. And as Hillary came and spoke at last meeting, you can request a ballot all the way up until fairly close to the election, but the sooner the better, so that you can get it and take a look at it. And if you get it near the end, right before the election, drop it off in the ballot box. Don't mail it, so that you don't risk it not getting there in time.
Terrific. Thank you, Ian. Always good and efficient reminders concerning local democracy. Liz.
I just want to remind people that there's still a high risk of COVID-19 out in Windham County. There's more cases in Vermont than there were in the spring, and we should all be very mindful. It would be terrible for people to get sick while they're waiting for a vaccine.
Absolutely. Vaccine delivery seems to be going well and ramping up even, but we need to just be patient and be careful until and through that time we get those vaccines coming. If the board is all set with their comments and or committee reports, I will move on to public participation. This is the time in the agenda, everyone, where you can make a comment, ask a question that can probably only be lightly answered for anything that's not explicitly in our agenda tonight. So if it's a subject matter that's coming up on the agenda, please wait till that agenda item to keep everything orderly. And I will also tell you how to do this. I'm going to, first of all, just give you a heads up that we occasionally use a consent agenda. That's the next item. There's 3 items on the consent agenda that the board has done their homework for. And during public participation would be the opportunity for any member of the public to ask a board member to pop that out, so to speak, so that we would have a discussion on that item. Just wanted to give you that heads up. And then administratively, that's not a word, from an administrative point of view, to raise your hand is, you can go to the participants button, which is usually found in the lower area of your screen, depending on your version. And that will make Daniel and Ian have both raised their little blue hands to show you. That will make your hand raise up in the participants section, and you'll see an order of who has raised their hand start to form there. And yeah, so I don't see anybody's hand up. Oh, I do see someone's hand up, and it's our good friend Gary has his hand up. So we'll start with Gary. I'll welcome you to turn on your camera if you'd like. Say hello.
Hey guys, how you doing? In recovery mode. How's everybody? Good.
Good. How are you?
I just want to say thank everybody. I want to thank you all. Send out my heart and my love to everybody for all the kind words and the prayers and the thoughts, keeping me going. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I got now to March 8th, taking a lot of medications, a lot of blood. I got to go back up there tonight. It's just very draining, but my heart, my strength go out to all you guys for all the support that you need for going forward, for the coming days coming up, March 2nd. I just want to remind also, Ian, March 23rd, you guys are going to be on BCTV, open forum. Just a reminder to the community about that.
February 23rd.
I'm sorry. Yeah, February 23rd.
Yeah, next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, 6 to 8. Just checking that out and looking forward for you guys doing great things. And my heart goes out, my strength that you guys will be the best for Brattleboro. I know everyone has the right hearts and the right intentions to going forward with this, not just the community, but for the state and for the country. I'm going to keep you guys in prayer as well, too. And again, I thank you all. And we all got some good candidates out there. And I'm looking forward to hearing from every one of you at some point. Even Daniel, I'll give you a call at some point. Say hi to you guys and Ian once all this is subsided. And I'd like to say thank you again, guys, really from the bottom of my heart. And I will be at RTM and at the other committees just hanging in there. Just some days taking a little rest to charge up these batteries. It's very draining and taxing at this time. But again, thank you all, and I love you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Good luck with everything. Thoughts and prayers are with you. So all the energy and strength you need, I'm sure we're all rooting for you. We have another hand up with Jessica Gelter. Welcome. If you'd like to turn on your camera, let us know where you're from and all that stuff. I forgot to do that with Gary.
Hi, so I'm Jessica Gelter. I am one of the many candidates running for the 1-year seat on the select board. But also, I just want to put my planning commission hat on right now and let you know that the planning commission sent out a press release today about some of the actions that we can take if the Article 2 about retail cannabis passes. So that information is out there. I know at the last meeting you talked about who was responsible for getting the information out there. We thought that was something that we could contribute to the conversation to let folks know what the town might have some power to do as far as regulation or zoning, or how to direct retail cannabis if it does pass. So that's all. I just wanted to bring your attention to that. I think the plan is to share it in the news with the newspapers and on iBrattleboro. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Let's see, we have another hand. Evan Chadwick, another familiar name. If you'd like to, there you are. Hello.
Yeah. Hey everyone, how you doing? So just briefly tonight, as most of you know, I am running for a one-year seat as well with the Brattleboro Select Board. I want to thank all of you guys for your service. Your dedication, especially during this very difficult time, is really inspirational. And frankly, it's your guys' dedication that got me interested in running, in participating in this very vital process to this wonderful town that we all call home. This is just a new piece of information that I just learned today, and it is incredibly concerning for me, is that I've now learned, and maybe I see Mark Kerrigan on here as well, we're now down to 20 officers, the Brattleboro PD. You know, I'm on the other end of seeing what bad policing is. I've sued police departments because of what I've seen is bad policing. And, you know, I feel that we are incredibly fortunate to have the leadership that we do, and to have a department is committed to getting better as we do. But I fear that if we continue to lose officers, one of the main reasons that you see why excessive use of force is employed is burnout. Officers are frustrated. They feel underappreciated. They're overworked, and that leads in any profession. You know, it's not just law enforcement, but it leads to bad decisions being made. And so I implore all of you, I've read the community safety report. I understand it. I respect it. I implore all of you as board members to take this, really, this is becoming a crisis in Brattleboro. And I implore all of us to work together on how we can come up with creative solutions to appreciate our police, to modify the jobs that they do, to make them more efficient, but also really to understand where we currently are and where this could go if we continue to lose good officers. So I thank you for the time. I'll get off my soapbox for now. I look forward to the dialogue moving forward. I look forward to March 2nd. And hopefully, I look forward to working with many of you in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you.
And good luck to both Jessica and Evan. A couple Tuesdays from now. If there's no other hands, I think we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Last couple times I've done that, just given a brief summary. It contains a monthly financial report, a replacement of police vehicles. These vehicles were already purchased. It's the bid award to upfit 2 of them. And finally, a Homeland Security grant for fire department equipment and training. So if any board members, oh, Liz?
I was just going to make a motion, but I'll wait and see if anyone has a comment.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay,
Thank you.
I move. Wait, I've lost my sheet.
I don't think you need the sheet. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
What do we want to do?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz. Don't worry, Liz, you're not up for election. So, you know,
Yeah.
you and I, we can mess up all we
Oh,
want.
you're always up for re-election. People have longer memories.
Liz has moved to approve our consent agenda. as presented. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye, please.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. We move on to hopefully become water and sewer commissioners. And for that, I also need a short cursory motion.
I move that we become water and sewer commissioners.
Thank you. Ian has moved to become water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. And I believe our first topic is going to be the water treatment facilities replacement project, something near and dear to our hearts. We're going to be hearing from Steve Barrett and Chrissy Haskins. Hi, Steve.
Good evening. I'm Steve Barrett. I'm the Director of Public Works. And tonight, the first item that we have under utilities is we're moving forward with our project for the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Project. It's pretty exciting as we advance through this process. And tonight, we're going to have a discussion about the revolving loan fund. That's a low interest loan. And our engineer is going to be available to give you some of the particulars on it. The application will require the signature of all the board members and the town manager. So with that, our engineer, Chrissy Haskins, again, that has been working with this project from the very beginning from Dufresne Group, is here to give you a review on the revolving loan fund.
Welcome, Chrissy.
Good evening. So the construction loan application for the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund has been prepared and is ready for signature by the Select Board. All members, as Steve noted, all members need to sign the application as well as the town manager. The application is for a total requested loan amount of $12,500,000, which is the same total project cost that we talked about when Steve and I were at the board back in January. The loan terms are expected to be 30 years with an interest rate between 0 and 3%. These terms will be finalized once the loan application is reviewed and approved. There is also a potential 25% subsidy available, which is a first come, first served subsidy and can only be locked in once the bond vote is approved by representative town meeting. The final design, just to give you a little update on where we are in the project, the final design review meeting with the Vermont Drinking Water Division was held on February 10th. With no major revisions being requested by the state review engineers. We are on schedule to complete final design with 100% final design plans and specs scheduled to be finished on Friday, February 19th, so this Friday. As for the other permit applications, Act 250 has been posted for public notice. Some of you may have seen that already. And the stormwater permits are out for public notice, and the wastewater permit is just waiting on the water permit to be issued. So the anticipated project schedule is to submit the loan application. I have a date of February 17th, but that will just depend on when everybody can get in to sign the application. But basically, as soon as we can get that signed by everyone, we can get that submitted. 100% design complete on February 19th. We'll be having that bond vote informational meeting March 17th, with the bond vote following on March 20th. And once we get the certified bond vote results, we can submit those to the state and get loan approval, which we are tentatively expecting in early April, and we can advertise for bids in early April with bid opening in early May. So everything is still on schedule from what we talked about in January, and we're still on track for a tentative construction start June of this year.
All right, thank you. Exciting. Liz.
Chrissy, I had a question about, you said that the discounted loan was based on first come, first served basis. Is ours later than other municipalities because of the representative town meeting schedule?
Yes, so your bond vote is going to be later than others. Some towns are still holding their bond votes in early March, when they would have had their town meetings. Some are delaying until May, when they might be able to have a town meeting. So there are some projects that will have bond votes in early March. The benefit for Brattleboro is that your project is actually going to be split, just because of the funding amount. You're being split between two different funding years. And so you're going to get about $5.5 million in the current funding year. And the rest of your funding is going to come from next funding year, which starts on July 1st. And so at that point, that'll open up a new round of subsidy. And when we talk about the readiness to proceed, which is what the first come, first serve is based on, you have to have readiness to proceed. This project should be in construction by then. And so you'll have all the readiness to proceed boxes checked off, and you'll be first in line for the next round of subsidy.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Peter.
Yeah, I'd just like to note for the public's benefit that on March 17th in the evening, there will be an informational meeting about this project and specifically about this funding, since it is the funding that will be the question before representative town meeting on March 20th. And so, everything that has been stated tonight will be stated again then, plus a fair amount of additional detail in a presentation, and then we'll stay as long as necessary. I say stay, it'll be in this setting, it'll be online, but we'll be in the meeting for as long as necessary to answer whatever questions the public may have that evening, and particularly the representative town meeting members may have in preparation for their meeting 3 days later. So,
Will the town water be turned green for that event?
Oh, that's St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
March 17th.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chrissy, for helping us shepherd all the heavy lifting you've been doing. Steve, are you feeling good about this?
I am. I'm quite excited, and I'm glad that we got in position last year for the revolving loan. And then, as Chrissy said, we're right in line. So the clock is really lined up nicely for us here. And the project has gone pretty smooth to this point. So I'm excited about it because it's been many, many years coming. And so it's well needed. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm so excited about it that on St. Patrick's Day, this Irish guy will be doing an informational meeting.
Indeed.
That's not excited, that's committed.
Good to hear. All right. And the board is so excited that we're going to be ready at our phones and waiting for Jessica's text so that we can all sign this important document tomorrow, right? So that'll be our part in it, very small part at this stage. I don't see any hands up. Any other board members with some interesting questions or comments about this agenda item? Daniel.
Got a motion.
All right,
If the
I'll
board
take-
is keen to hear it. I move to approve the application for financing through the state of Vermont's Revolving Loan Fund for the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facilities Replacement Project.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel has moved to approve the application for financing through the state of Vermont's Revolving Loan Fund for the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facilities Replacement Project. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Steve's going to tell us a little bit about a Green Mountain Power matter at the Signal Hill Pump Station.
So the next utility project is up at Signal Hill. as the board remembers, we did a land purchase there last year. Also, it's in the 2021 capital plan to upgrade a water pumping station that services the Signal Hill, Hillcrest, Guilford Street area. So as we go through the final design, it's been recommended that we upgrade the power source to a 3-phase power, which will give us the ability to use variable frequency drives and be more energy efficient with that particular pump station. So we're recommending, we get an estimate from Green Mountain Power for $18,662 to upgrade the power to that location for the new pump station. So I'm seeking your approval and authorization to expend up to that amount.
Board member questions? Ian.
Hey, Steve. Quick question. Am I recalling correctly that this Signal Hill pump station was the location where it's kind of close to a residential, like a home or something, and we were talking about noise? I'm wondering, is this going to change that assessment that we had a while ago, that it wouldn't be very loud, or it wouldn't be too loud?
Well, of course, we're going to go through the planning department. There's certain things that we have to, go by as far as the regulations and, decibels with sound. We are going to be a neighbor. The existing neighbors there's a pump station there now.
Yeah.
The difference is, of course, this one will be larger. It'll also have backup power. So I suspect that during a power outage, there was not a generator there, nor was there any water service for the people that were connected to that water main. So the balance may be, with the additional noise, you'll have water, versus having no water. The downside, certainly with a larger pump station, would be more sounds. We're looking at a precast concrete building to buffer the sound within the building itself for the pumps. And the pumps will be variable speed. There'll be a smaller pump and it'll graduate up to a next larger pump, and they'll go in succession to provide the water needed based on the demand. So most of the demand currently up there is pretty low. So I suspect it shouldn't be too bad with the smaller pumps. During a fire event, all the pumps will ramp up, and certainly that could cause more sound. But that was one of the things that we did hear when we went to planning. And so as we go through the design, we're going to take that in consideration.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
And then we also, once we get a final design, you get something on a plat that we can show the people up there, then I'll have a meeting with all the neighbors, and show them exactly what's going to be there. If there wasn't a pump station, there would have been a house here also. So there's some benefits, and I guess there's some drawbacks too to having something more industrial in your backyard too.
Mm-hmm.
But we heard from one of the neighbors, they'd like a setback that's a little bit further away from their house, which it will be. The existing pump station was actually incorporated into one of the lots. That'll be abandoned and taken off that lot.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other board member questions? Seeing none, I would take a motion. Move us along. Crickets. I got dead air.
Is that me this time? Okay. I move to authorize the town staff to accept a quote of $18,662 from Green Mountain Power to install 3-phase power at the Signal Hill pump station.
Thank you, Ian. Ian has made a motion to authorize town staff to accept a quote of $18,662 from Green Mountain Power to install 3-phase power at the Signal Hill pump station. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. That's 4-0. Thank you. And now we get to probably the most colorful thing of the evening, in my opinion. Steve, tell us.
So the next item is, I guess when my assistant, Dan Tyler, wrote this memo, He used the actual term of what we traditionally call wastewater grinder. And as you recall, we just replaced one in for the west or the north end of town. But the term Muffin monster. And so I've received all kinds of phone calls. I actually received a YouTube video from Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. All kinds of interest, all kinds of interesting comments. So it's nice because it does bring focus to what we do at the wastewater treatment plant, which seems to be a place that is just, downstream from everything and goes unnoticed. So it did generate a lot of interest. So what this is it's a grinder that takes material that gets dumped into the waste and it grinds it up to make it manageable as it goes through the wastewater system. This grinder is actually at the facility itself. And so it's very important. It's been online for 10 years. So that's pretty much the life expectancy, similar to that spring tree station. It was 10 years there also. So we feel that we've got the proper life out of it. The cost is $12,770.44, which is approximately half the cost. That's to rebuild this Muffin monster. It's approximately half the cost to replace it. So we feel that it makes most sense to repair this and put it back in service. So we had contacted the town manager, Peter Elwell, and said it's very urgent. This piece of equipment really shouldn't be offline because it can affect all types of equipment within the facility. So the town manager granted us authority to move forward with an emergency purchase. So then we're here tonight to have that decision ratified. And that's what I'm here for.
Thank you for that summary. I don't know. I have several jokes about this, but I think I do have a serious question. But Ian, go first.
Okay, thank you. So I understand from the memo that the setup of this grinder at the facility means that it can't be checked, like maintenance. So it sort of just grinds and grinds and grinds until eventually it needs to be fixed. I guess is my understanding. Is that unique to our facility here in Brattleboro? Is that kind of how they were designed 10 years ago? Because it sounds like that's when this was put in with a new setup.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, it's not unique. I mean, they're usually the first line of defense in the wastewater system. So your influent, like at your pump station, it's right there. So it's not easily accessible. You can bypass it, shut it down. But the one at this facility is actually between the digesters. And so it's in line between two digesters. And the digester is material that's already been processed once, but then it's going to another set of the process. So it's a little bit different. We're looking at ways to see if there's, something we can do to make that better. Because, we wanted to bring that out, as a factor. And we're certainly looking at it to see if we can do something different.
Yeah, I was surprised when I read that because is the one that's the first thing when the pipe comes in to the facility that's like right on the floor there, is that also a grinder?
Yes, and the difference is when the wastewater first comes in, it could reject material, go in reverse, kick it back out. It's an open vessel.
Yeah.
This one is in a closed circuit piping system, okay, because you're moving actually biosolids from one location to another. So it needs to be encapsulated and it needs to be protected. Mm-hmm. It's really a different type of operation. Where the open stream coming in, it goes into the grinder, but then you can see it and it can reject material, or you could bypass it and then again visibly see it.
Yeah.
This is different because it's actually incorporated into the piping itself. And that's the big difference.
Okay. All right. That's really helpful. Thank you.
And you wouldn't want that other material. There's no way you could do it because it's under pressure. Mm-hmm. So if you had a problem, you'd have a really big problem. So that's the reason.
Yeah.
Good question. Excellent question.
My question probably wasn't as good, but it had to do with, I assume since the it's already been approved and we're just ratifying the decision, that you can get along without the Muffin monster grinder for a week or two.
Yeah, just and
Because
the
it's
longer
between
you're
stages.
without, then the worse it can be on the equipment. So,
And Daniel?
Just a kind of question about ratifying decisions that were already made for spending. What's the limit that Peter could authorize without it coming before the board? Or is it about the circumstances as well?
It's only about the circumstances, actually. So my limit under normal circumstances is $10,000.
Right.
And so we bring you things sometimes that are just $11,000 or $12,000 that seem really routine, but it's because we're doing them in advance in the way that we would always want to make these purchases. There have been times when we've spent six figures upon my authority because it was so urgent. And so we informed the board and asked for you to ratify.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Liz?
I'm ready for a motion if y'all are.
Yes. No more
Okay.
votes.
I move to ratify Town Manager Elwell's emergency authorization to expend $12,777.44 to rebuild the Muffin Monster grinder.
Thank you. That's a cold end right there. Yeah, thank you, Liz. Liz has made a motion to ratify Town Manager's Elwell emergency authorization to expend $12,777.44 to rebuild the Muffin Monster grinder unit or something. It just feels a little incomplete. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. 4-0. Thank you, Steve. We have one more.
we have one more. Yes. What drew a lot of people's attention, there was actually a cyber attack at a water facility in Florida, Oldsmar, Florida, which the treatment plants, many of the treatment plants throughout the country, they have a SCADA system. That's a supervisory control data acquisition is what it's called. And what that does is it can regulate the speed of pumps. It can open and close valves. So in this particular instance, somebody, a guest, came in and started to increase the chemical feed into the water system. And unfortunately, in that application, the operator was there. They were able to, cease the external operation of the pump. And now they're looking at their facility and their operations. So, this captured our attention immediately. We're linked to the American Water Works. We're linked to the state of Vermont drinking water. So we instantly got a lot of alerts on this. And then even some of the board members, when you saw this, you alerted us too, town manager. So a lot of eyes are on this, which was good. So in turn, what better opportunity to look at ourselves to make sure that we're doing the right things. And fortunately, nothing is 100% proof when it comes to cyber attacks. But we do have firewalls, which the other facility didn't. Our chemical feeds are set manually, and then you can operate them through the SCADA system, but you can't ramp them up to a level that would be so high as to cause problems. And then as far as the residuals or the levels. And also all our water gets pumped up to a 3 million gallon tank, okay, right from the treatment plant. And then we have the ability to shut that off. And we also have 3 million, 4 million gallons of storage, okay, as a backup if we had this type of problem. So not saying that, we're immune to this by any means, but we've looked at what we've had and we feel that we're in a good position. We contacted our engineer that's actually we actually did the design of our facility way back and has continued to do designs. And then they'll take a look at what we have. They said our particular package that we have at the plant is real good. The new computers that we'll have in SCADA system should be even better with bigger firewalls. But we told them let's take a look at this And so we're going to take a little deeper dive to make sure that we're going to ensure that we have safe water for the people of Brattleboro. So we just wanted, I know the board was interested in us to have a little dialogue about it. And that's what we followed up. And that's what we found, that what we have and compared to this other community. And so that's my update.
Thanks, Steve. And kudos to Liz, who wanted to just put this on the agenda and take a little look at it with Steve. Liz?
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Steve. And I thought you're going the extra mile. Not only did you report to us of your security measures, but you also asked the company to review it with you. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
And also our operators did attend a cybersecurity training just recently. So with our regular training that we're doing, this is one of the elements that our staff had actually gone and got training, which was good. And now I wasn't aware of that particular training that they did. So they brought that to my attention. It was just another step in the right direction. Let's put it that way.
Great, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and an impressive facility, which Ian and I recently saw, right? That wasn't that long ago. We took a little tour. My son came along and tried his best to get into the system. And the 3-year-old was stumped. So everybody can rest easy. We have a couple hands up from our viewing public, so I will take Gary's first. Welcome back.
Hey, Steve, how are you? This thank you again for doing a great job up my way with the snow plowing. You're doing an awesomeness as always, and up on the streets. I hear them late at night. It's like, yes, I can walk on the sidewalks, which is awesome. But did you recently hear about what happened up in Burlington? Are you testing alongside with the cyber attacks with the water treatment? Because they said they recently found that UK COVID. How are we, I guess, or how are you testing? Are we testing the waters too in case there's any situations like that should arise and ensue in our waters as well?
So that started out as really a different wastewater treatment plants volunteered. We did too. We weren't selected. We have put our name in for another round to be considered. We've attended some meetings just recently with UVM. Dartmouth's involved. There's several scientists involved in this technology. And what they're doing is they're basically testing the wastewater to see how much COVID's in a particular area. And then what they'll do is they'll divide the collection system up to see if there's any indicators there that can help them. You know, if there's an outbreak on, say, the north end versus the south end. So it's really, it's a test. It's interesting. It's picked up some of the new strains, which, you know, has caught people's attention.
Right.
We're on board. We've attended several meetings on it. If we're selected, there's a cost associated with it too. And there is some grant funds. So we're interested. We'd be more than willing to participate if selected.
Okay, because I was listening to Elizabeth also mentioning, I mean, I'm double masking myself because immune deficiency, taking all these tests and chemicals and all these pills, but something like that in the water treatment, I mean, is that sure there's proper filtration, as you say?
Well, this is actually the wastewater treatment plant that's being tested. It's the wastewater, not the drinking water. So it's the wastewater is the barometer to test to see if it's from the fecal matter to determine what percentage of the population may have COVID. So it has nothing to do with the potable water or the drinking water. It's strictly the wastewater. And then it's just used as a barometer to determine, you know, it's probably more helpful in a little bit larger city or town if they have a collection system that's divided. So that's what it's being used for, in long-term testing, to see if that might be an indicator in the future. If they can really ground this type of testing out, it might be something that more sewer plants do to say, oh, geez, we have an outbreak before we knew it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve, for keeping us posted on that.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Stephen Dotson. Welcome.
Welcome. Can you see me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight briefly that this is one case in point where sustainability is already written into part of the DNA of how our different departments think. And Steve is ahead of me in some of the work that I've wanted to do, right? So what we're anticipating here is disruption from a cyber attack of critical infrastructure. And we have human-based systems and digital systems, and we have a separation between the two. And that alone creates a whole different situation than many, many towns in all of the United States. And the awareness of what we have and how we can use that and the examination of it, you know, that makes my job easier. So I just want to highlight that. And that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I've often had the experience, a couple times had the experience of asking Steve what I thought was a simple question, and then Steve produces a book of research he's already done on the matter. So appreciate your study in all the areas where you should be studying. So, board
It's
members.
a matter of information flowing as well as everything else.
That's right. Liz has the zingers tonight. It's good. Does anyone have a motion? No, we don't have a motion on
No
this one.
motion.
That's
The
silly.
last one was just the information. And thank you for everything tonight. And we're going to move forward with all the projects. And thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Great. Well, I would take a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
So moved.
Daniel has moved to adjourn as Water Sewer Commissioners. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. 4-0, and we move on to a pleasant, I think, piece of our agenda. And this, we're going to get an update from the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro from Michelle Simpson. So Michelle, there you are. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Old friend and new, a lot of familiar faces out there. I hope I'm coming in okay. Not always best internet here at my house, but I'm the only one on it tonight. I don't think anyone's doing any schoolwork right now, so hopefully it'll be okay. I'm really just here tonight to say thank you to the town of Brattleboro on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club. And I think Patrick is going to make me the host so that I can share my screen and share a message with all of you.
Great. I think he has already done that, so you can look for that.
I can go ahead. Okay. All right. This is a message from the kids and the board and the staff at the Girls Club, all of you. I'm Michelle Simpson.
I'm not seeing it. I'm hearing something.
There's a green button for sharing the screen.
Michelle, can you hear us? We're actually not seeing your screen share. Do you know where the share screen button is?
board member for the Brattleboro Boys and Girls Club. Thank you.
Dear Brattleboro, as board president, I want to sincerely thank you for all the gifts.
Michelle, we're getting the gist certainly, but we're not getting the screen share.
Oh, you guys are. see. Could you not see that or hear it?
Well, we saw you watching something and we heard. Did you use the share screen button?
I did. I will try.
It should be lit. It's
one more
green.
time.
Green at the bottom. And there's a chance the bandwidth
got
isn't good
it.
enough for us.
Okay. Hold on.
And there's a chance.
Yeah, it is true.
Hey.
Hey, here we go.
Oh, good. I'm going to start it over. Hold on.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody.
Hi, I'm Michelle Simpson, the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro. The world is complicated. Helping kids is simple. Over the past year, we were able to help so many kids because of our support. They and the board and our staff and I all would really like to thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Squires. I work here at Boys and Girls. I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
What's up, Brian?
Brattleboro, thank you for your support. Hello, I'm William Fortune, board member for the Brattleboro Boys and Girls Club. Thank you.
Dear Brattleboro, as board president, I want to sincerely thank you for all the gifts we have received and all the gifts yet to be received.
Okay. Whoops.
Oh, that's great, Michelle.
All right. We'll stop sharing.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
you could share that URL with us too via email if you'd like.
I will, absolutely. Okay. I also
You know what, Michelle, we're not hearing you. Would you do me a favor and just turn off your camera and we might be able to hear you.
and we've been open ever since with many
I think
on
we've lost.
youth
Oh, there we go.
leadership.
That might work a little better. I think we can
My
hear you.
sound's
now.
bad. Okay.
No, the sound is good. If you keep the camera off, it's easier on your Wi-Fi.
Okay. We've really been able to focus on youth development at Flat Street because we've been able to move the aftercare program for ages 6 to 11 to the retreat farm to give them a safe outdoor experience. We've been really focused on in-person engagement to combat the isolation and to support kids and their social emotional learning. So I'm happy to talk more at another upcoming meeting and keep everybody updated. And I'm happy to take any questions that people may have now, but it's been quite an inspiring time at the club. And we really just wanted to come to the select board and make sure that everybody there and everyone in the town of Brattleboro knows how appreciative we are. There's been just a real outpouring of support this year, and it's been very, very heartwarming. So thanks to everybody. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, absolutely. Hang on for a little bit so we can ask you a few questions. Daniel.
I appreciate the thanks, and I want to redirect it to representative town meeting members who, through the human services budget, actually have the say in what you all get through that request. But I do appreciate the thanks. And I used to work at the club about 6 years ago. I think I worked mostly at Westgate, and I did some of the summer programs. It's nice to see Ryan Squires. I'm amazed he's still kicking. But I appreciate all the work you do, and I know it's meaningful in the town.
Thank you, Daniel. Certainly. Yeah, we're certainly accepting the thanks on behalf of the entire town, all of residents, of course. Liz.
I just wanted to give a special thanks because I know it's so hard for the Boys and Girls Club and everybody to reimagine their work through COVID.
Absolutely. And maintaining those connections, those in-person connections, so important to the youth, I would say. Anybody else have any other questions for Michelle? Well, we thank you for the very sweet video. And again, please send that URL. It was a little breaky-uppy, as I say. I wonder if I should coin that term because I tend to use it at least. Nope, I'm getting a no. At least breaky-uppy. It's a little too much like achy-breaky, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's done with. That was like 2 years ago. So old. Thank you, Michelle, again, on behalf of the town. And it was a sweet video that you all put together. All right, so I guess, board, unless you have any objections, we will move on. We are in new business. I should have said that earlier. Our second item in new business is to hear a recommendation from our Energy Committee concerning cow power. So let's see, Peter, we're going to have a couple people come up, correct?
Yes. Oscar and Django should be in the meeting to present from the Energy Committee, and there they are.
Hi, I'm sorry, my name is Desi, which happens a lot, but my real name is Django, I assure you.
All right, Desi, I'll try to get that right. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Oscar, go right ahead. Or does he?
Okay, we're going to make a quick recommendation and then take whatever questions you all have. And I'm not going to go all the way into the history of this because I think we've talked about it before, but basically there was a non-binding town meeting request that the town government buy all of its electricity from Green Mountain Power's cow power program, which is 100% renewable and good in some other ways. Town staff was looking into it. Then I got pulled in, and then we decided to have the committee take a look at it and come back with a recommendation, which is where we're at now. Hopefully you have the proposal written up and Stephen Dotson's memo. Did that? Okay, yep. Awesome. So basically there's a couple different ways we could go. The committee voted unanimously to recommend sort of the option that seems sort of most responsive to the goals we all established of reducing emissions. Basically, we are recommending that the town purchase 37% of its electricity every year from the cow power program, which is a 4 cent per kilowatt extra cost. If we looked at that based on 2019 usage, that would be about $42,000 extra cost to the town. And for anyone listening who hasn't seen the proposal, the reason it's 37% is because Green Mountain Power's current mix of electricity is about 63% renewable already. It's mostly hydro with a little bit of solar. So the math doesn't exactly work out, but it's pretty close. And if we bought 37% of our electricity through this program, we would be essentially, the town's electricity would essentially be 100% renewable. There's a couple other options in the memo. based on Stephen's research, this is the one the committee decided to recommend. And yeah, there's some weird stuff in there, so we're happy to take any questions. And before I finish up, I'm just gonna kick it over to Django for a sec.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say. I think that's a pretty good summary. I just want to, the point that comes to my mind the most is for the town to establish legitimacy, like before telling its citizens to do something towards sustainability, for as a municipality to have a 100% renewable portfolio. It not only gets the town a lot of clout, so to speak, but it also, it makes, when it comes to like decisions about making sustainability, when it comes to citizens, like having you be backed up makes it a lot more relatable from the citizens to listen to. Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Cool. Well, that's it from us to start.
Oh, Tim, you're muted.
Yikes, sorry about that. I had a truck going by and I forgot about it. Daniel's got his hand up, and I have a clarifying question that might...
Go ahead with your clarifying question.
Okay. When I saw the document and Stephen's memo, or maybe it's just mentioned in the recommendation from the committee, it talked about the 2017 RTM resolution. Now, I went back to 2017 to try to find it because it wasn't provided for me. And what I found was the 2018, because you said, Oscar, you said it was a non-binding in 2017. I wanted to go back and see what passed.
You could be right. I looked this up. That doesn't mean anything.
I actually found something better than a non-binding. I found in March 6th of 2018, it went to the voters, and I remember this happening. I just had to see it in front of me. But I'm wondering if we're talking about two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the year is wrong, but I'm talking about the thing that, and I think the thing that's been brought up before is it's 2018, other business, the renewable energy resolution by Kurt Dimes. Okay. Whereas, et cetera, we advise the select board in town to purchase the town building's electricity from renewable sources such as cow power.
Yes.
Right. The one I found was very similar, so I'm a little bit confused. It's an actual article that passed overwhelmingly, that was voted upon by the town. And the language is that the undersigned voters of the town ask that the town do its part by committing to efforts such as, but not limited to, and then down on F, there's several letter items. F is using 100% renewable energy in new and renovated town buildings.
So this was an actual ballot initiative?
I actually wrote it, so okay. I can tell you something about it.
Good, Daniel. But I just want to point out, because earlier you said non-binding, and that's great, but this is actual binding vote. So I thought it might be a stronger document to build the case with.
Perfect.
Daniel, do you want to clarify?
No, I'm not going to undermine work that I did 3 years ago. I wanted to bring us back to something very concrete and practical. So we've often talked about this term cow power, and perhaps some of us in the community have a notion of what that actually is, but I think it would be good to speak to what this investment actually is. So Oscar, I don't know if you're ready to do that.
Sure. So cow power, I'm sure I will mangle some technical details here, but cow power is a program that Green Mountain Power runs that anyone can buy into, even just regular users. And it essentially pays local farmers to set up systems that allow them to convert methane on their farms into electricity using various digesters and stuff that I don't, fully understand. But it's a great it's essentially 100% renewable in the best sense, without the caveats that something like hydropower might have. It's money going to local farmers. and it's in the region. So it's a really great program, and I think pretty responsive to what we're talking about here. That is a good point. We definitely should have explained exactly what it was.
And if you don't mind me just following up on that. So cows poop, that happens. That's just going to happen, right? Whether we invest in this or not, that will continue to happen. And when they do, that releases methane into the environment. And this process is actually kind of intervening in that and taking that, waste and then processing it through digesters. Steve was talking a bit earlier about how our wastewater treatment uses digesters. And those digesters extract methane and then use that to create electricity, is my understanding.
Yes, mine too.
Okay.
And there are sort of additional benefits that nobody is really ready to put a number on, but obviously that methane is a greenhouse gas, and doing other stuff
Right.
with it is good even beyond the electricity it creates.
Right. And so I'm sorry, I'm taking up a lot of time. I'm going to say nothing after this. I just want to make sure everyone in the community who's watching this understands what this is about. So what we're actually doing is we're going to pay more money for our electricity, which to some people might sound like a really terrible idea. But another framing of that is we're going to invest in this renewable way of creating electricity. And we're going to choose to do that for a certain amount of our power needs, because we already can say that the rest are already in some way, with lots of caveats, renewable.
Yes.
In addition, a percentage of that money, the additional money that we're investing this, goes directly to the farmers. So in a way, we're also investing in our state as a whole.
Good.
The agriculture
Thanks.
thereof.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I think I'd like to invite Stephen. I know that Kurt had his hand up first, but Stephen actually wrote this document, and I would think it'd be unfair to not have Stephen up on the screen as well, because I know that I might have a couple questions for him. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, thank you.
And then as soon as we can, we'll take a couple comments as well.
There was just one other critical point that I thought was very relevant to the conversation. It's not only supporting our in-state farmers. There are very few pathways to directly support in-state renewable energy development. And this is the most defined one that we have access to. So in a sense, I know that we've been in this conversation over the months and years. Generation of in-state renewables has been one of those goals that we've held. So this is the clearest path to doing that and support farms and enable them to cut down on the pollution they emit because of cow farts. And, if we're talking about muffin monsters, I'm going to mention cow farts, just to be clear. The other distinction I just want to make clear is that we're not talking about all power. We're talking about electricity. The electricity portfolio of GMP is 63% renewable, and that's why we're asking for 37%. We're not going renewable in our whole power portfolio, which would include fossil fuels such as coal, gas, oil, and then biomass, diesel, our cars, those kinds of things, right? This is just electricity. So just to be clear, we're taking a meaningful step, but it isn't one that will make our whole portfolio renewable. It makes our electricity as a municipality renewable and carbon neutral.
Does everybody mind if I jump in for a clarification for Stephen? The thing that passed, the article that passed, which Daniel had something to do with, and I'm saying that in a positive note, said 100% renewable energy in new and renovated town buildings. Stephen, are you talking about all the power that the municipality uses overall, or are you just talking about new and renovated town buildings?
He's muted.
Oh, sorry. Stephen, you can.
I apologize, Patrick. I won't mute myself again.
You did hear me.
So what I would ask you is, does that resolution talk specifically about electricity, or does it talk about all power? Because I think what you're citing is something that's specific to all power generation, which is important and a larger focus of the Energy Committee. Currently, they're working on heating system transitions from fossil fuels to heat pumps and wood biomass. So this is one step in that direction, but this is not pursuant exactly to that resolution you just described, because it's not all the power portfolio, it's just the electricity. Is that clearer?
It simply says using 100% renewable energy in new and renovated town buildings. But in other parts of the resolution, it does say phasing out fossil fuel, for instance, and replacing oil. Peter.
Yeah, I can clarify, I think, the point of confusion here. So as you pointed out, Tim, earlier in the discussion, you're referring to something that went to the voters at a different time and in a different context than the resolution that came out of other matters discussion at the end of the 2018 representative town meeting. The work that town staff has done up until about a year or so ago related to cow power on a kind of winding road implementation of this, all flowed out of that 2018 representative town meeting action. And the place that we arrived at about a year ago, not all that satisfying place, because we had kind of looked at a couple of different options along the way that had not come to pass or come to fruition. But we came to a place where, because we hadn't implemented the cow power supplement, I guess I'd say, you know, the paying the additional in order to buy a certain amount from cow power in order to have our electricity be 100% renewable. And because Stephen was coming on as the sustainability coordinator, and we had not had the Energy Committee involved in this very extensively. There had been some back and forth between staff and the Energy Committee, but it had been primarily staff that had been bringing you updates and alternatives. And so what we suggested to you, Patrick and I at that time, is, you know, let Stephen come aboard and, you know, begin to do the variety of things that he does as the sustainability coordinator. And one of those things being working with the Energy Committee to develop this and other recommendations to move forward on some of the work that had not moved forward, things we had talked about but not actually acted upon. And so the micro piece of this that's before you tonight is cow power coming forward with a recommendation from the Energy Committee to purchase 37% of our town electricity, town of Brattleboro electricity, not community-wide, but town government-wide. Purchase 37% of that, since we buy from Green Mountain Power, and Green Mountain Power's portfolio is 63% renewable, leaving that 37% delta. So we buy that from cow power in order to be 100% renewable for the electricity that we use.
Thank you. And Stephen probably has a follow-up. Sorry, Liz, I'll go to you next.
Uh-oh.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I'm sorry. In talking with Green Mountain Power, what I learned as well is that if we were to make this purchase, it would be one of the largest, or perhaps the largest purchase of cow power in the state. It would be a very significant investment in this program for them, larger than many others. So noteworthy in a number of ways.
Liz.
So speaking of noteworthy and going to Stephen's memo, he talks about item number 1 and item number 2. Item number 1 is $6,954 investment, which is probably more of the norm of other towns in the state of Vermont, versus the $42,000 investment. And then if you go all the way down past all the numbers for every bit of electricity that the town uses, you come to these two calculations, which I would like to bring your attention to. One is to make all town buildings carbon neutral to cow power, and that's this $6,954. And the other is to make all electricity in the town carbon neutral and 100% renewable, and that's the 42,000. So this huge investment is a much larger equation than what was voted on, which said using 100% renewable energy in new and renovated town buildings. So somewhere we went from new and renovated town buildings to all the municipal electricity. And in doing so, we have this out of scale investment in cow power in Brattleboro, which I'm not sure that the taxpayers and voters of Brattleboro bought into.
May I just clarify, Tim, please, again? Because I tried to speak to that a minute ago, and I must have confused the matter rather than clarifying it. May I go ahead?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
So we didn't stray from the thing that was on the ballot. We, as town government, in the implementation of these actions, never were working on the specific implementation of that recommendation. That was general guidance received by the town, things to aspire to, but it wasn't the goal that the prior year and a half's worth of staff work and then the follow-up of the last year or so when it's been the Energy Committee and Stephen, it wasn't focused on this idea that new and renovated buildings should have certain renewable energy in it. Those are things we have looked at. As we have looked at building renovations, we've looked at that advice and looked at energy efficiency. We're doing that right now at the final design of the water plant. We're looking at ways in which to make sure that it is as energy efficient as possible using modern technology. But that's not what brought this matter to you this evening. What brought this matter to you this evening, starting almost 3 years ago, and then in, again, sort of a winding path through lots of different phases of staff work, and then this most recent phase that was, actively driven by the Energy Committee, was the resolution that was passed at the end of a representative town meeting under any other matters in 2018, which was specifically about using renewable resources like cow power specifically. And so we took that in an implementation meeting in April of 2018, going over it with the select board of what had come out of town meeting. We were sent away as staff to do some follow-up on that matter specific to cow power. And all of our work since then has been related to the town's entire electricity consumption. It hasn't been specific to buildings, and certainly not specific just to new and renovated buildings.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that the select board needs to pass this. This is the newest iteration of something that's before you for a policy decision. But I want to make sure that we understand that what is before you is in fact what has been being developed coming out of that 2018 town meeting all along, considering the full portfolio of electricity usage, not just specifically buildings.
I have a question for Stephen.
I'm feeling like Ian has been
Go ahead.
patient. Liz, let's get back to that.
If it's a follow-up, please.
Well, just that he mentioned that this was such a unusually high contribution to cow power. What would the average municipality, or what are other municipalities investing in cow power? What do those sums look like if $42,000 is such a supreme amount?
I don't know. Is Stephen still with us?
I don't know, but Oscar has his hand up and I think he can speak.
Oscar, can you answer that question?
Sure.
I'm
Well,
here. I'm sorry. I had to get unmuted again. I have bad habits with Zoom. The truth, as I understand it, is no municipality of our size or scale has invested in cow power. So the average investment is a residence or a small commercial building. It's not a portfolio of buildings such as a municipality possesses. That's why it's a magnitude of scale different for them. We're a different kind of account altogether. And so it's not as though we're paying any more than any of those other investors. They pay the same surcharge. We just have a much larger demand. And it's just as simple as that. So it's just scale.
Thank you. Ian.
Okay, thank you very much. Oscar, Stephen, Jenga, thank you very much for the work on this and presenting it to the board. I'd say I did some research on cow power, and one of the pieces of information I'll add to that discussion that happened a little earlier is also utilizing this waste is good for the farms, like not even the money, but the getting it out, and it reduces like the growth of certain weeds and all sorts of things. So there's some interesting other benefits to this program as well. And I would encourage people to read into it because it's pretty interesting. So I think we can all agree that this is fairly complex. So what I'm curious is, and I direct this to Oscar or to Stephen, whoever feels more confident in being able to answer these questions. I want to know what we can say with confidence. So if the board were to approve this proposal, and I'm going to try to phrase this as eloquently as I can to get it exactly right. So we were to approve this proposal, could we say with confidence the town, capital T town of Brattleboro's municipal energy consumption is 100% renewable? And could we say, if we were to approve this proposal, that the capital T town of Brattleboro's municipal energy consumption carbon neutral, 100% carbon neutral?
Can I jump in there? Please.
Sure.
Sometimes it helps when a layperson's question, because I think if you simply substitute the word electricity for the word energy.
Okay. No, that's exactly what I'm looking
up from Steve.
Clarity of, okay, so can I rephrase that then? So the town of Brattleboro municipal electrical consumption or electricity consumption is 100% renewable, and the capital T town of Brattleboro's municipal electricity consumption is 100% carbon neutral if we were to approve this proposal. And Oscar's got his hand up.
Yeah, Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's at the risk of going down a bit of a road. I'm not going to, but it's a little bit, because of the way we're doing it, it will be a little bit inexact. Okay. If you think about it for yourself, you can see that there's sort of a hard to get to point, because 63% of our energy will be some percentage renewable, and the other half, or the other 37%, will be 100% renewable. So you would have to put an asterisk after it if you said 100% renewable. To me, as someone who's focused on taking tangible steps forward here, the difference is not really that big of a deal. We would be very close to 100% renewable. If we wanted to really, say that with no asterisk at all, we would buy 100% of our electricity from cow power. But the amount more renewable that we would be if we did that would be a couple percentage points, which is why we're recommending this. As far as carbon neutral, Green Mountain Power's electricity is already 94% carbon neutral. So I think you could say with absolute confidence that that's true. Of course, that mix includes things like nuclear. I mean, there are infinite paths you can go down with this discussion, but I think for all intents and purposes, a 37% buy would make the town's electricity use both 100% renewable and carbon neutral.
Ian looks like he
Thank
needs
you.
to-
I'd like to be granted a follow-up there. I think in that case, the climate impact of this is real. Brattleboro should be a leader in this. We passed a resolution. I don't recall what the vote number was, but it passed the board to commit the town of Brattleboro to significant steps in in making ourselves more green, more renewable. This is a clear step in that direction, actionable. I urge the full board to vote for this and not to conflate a 2018 ballot initiative with a 2018 representative town meeting other business resolution, because it is very clear from the memo and the material which this is coming from.
Okay, I have a clarifying on that, but I'm going to let Daniel talk first.
I'm amazed that this work that I did all these years ago is being dredged up again. And it's kind of interesting to me because maybe how I phrased that came across wrong. I saw your face. That's not a criticism. I'm surprised to hear us discussing this 2018 town meeting day ballot initiative that I helped draft. And I remember writing it, and I found it online now, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember saying that. You know, that was a non-binding resolution in the same way that this, any other business resolution from the town meeting of that year is also non-binding. The difference between the two is that the resolution we had on the town meeting day ballot was pretty extensive. And that bit that you picked out about new and renovated buildings is just speaking to electricity and renovated buildings. There was other things on the list as well. The thing about cow power at town meeting was very clear. It's like, buy cow power. And lots of people voted for it. You could question either of those things as like, should the town actually do it, right? And the town chose, for whatever reason, to proceed with the cow power thing through staff work and, through, coming to board meetings and sending it to a committee and whatnot. I'm pleasantly surprised that we're sort of in this moment where we're going to make a substantial commitment to renewable energy generation in this state. I think that it is a much more significant investment in that project than perhaps one might have expected from that non-binding vote back in 2018. And what I know about the people of Brattleboro in terms of their attitudes on climate action and environmental matters is that this is really important to them. And that is why that much more extensive resolution passed overwhelmingly. And I think this is in the spirit of both things. It's a clear action. It's a good investment in our state. And some of our electricity will be powered by cow poop. I mean, that's not like scientifically accurate, but it's, you get the idea. So hooray. I'm all for it. I think that it's a bold step, and this is a time when we need bold steps.
Thanks, Daniel. Liz, do you want to go before I clarify something?
No, please clarify.
I just wanted to clarify, thank you, that it was not my intention to muddy any waters by bringing up the clarification on where the original, the will of the voters came from, or the will of RTM, whichever one you want to pick, because it's mentioned in the cow power recommendation up front. So I wanted to be true to the spirit of the voters and of the RTM members. So I wanted to clarify that up front. And it wasn't me trying to pick apart any, I was trying to prop up the idea that using 100% renewable energy was something that was voted on by a large part of our town, right? I have always, if you recall, I've always had a problem with cow power. So I can hold my comment on that, but I just want to assure Ian that I didn't bring up that clarification on where this statement that our committee has made in the first paragraph about the 2017 Representative Town Meeting Renewable Energy Resolution. I thought they were talking about the vote. And so I thought it was important to clarify that, okay? To go forward with how I'm going to vote on this. Now that was my clarification, so I'm going to let either Liz or if Oscar needs to jump in about that. Liz?
So I'm just stuck on Stephen's memo, which identifies options and the difference between option number 1 and option number 2. And it looks to me like option number 1 is a perfectly reasonable course of action for the town of Brattleboro, consistent with all of the, whether it's the vote or the resolution, and it's investing in cow power to the tune of approximately $7,000, which option number 2 is 6 times as large. And as a select board member, I would find it very hard to justify that we would be paying a premium to the town to the tune of $42,000 for electricity, when the electricity that the town is already buying from Green Mountain Power is 63% renewable. So why can't we just take the $7,000 and feel real good about that?
Thanks, Liz. Oscar?
Yeah, to respond to that, I think we've tried to be disciplined during this process, and that was the reason, well, one of the reasons that we proposed goals at a time, when nobody, us included, really wanted to be talking about goals. We wanted to be talking about doing stuff, all that sort of thing. We've tried, and, personally, if it were up to me, this might not be, there is an argument for investing more as well, certainly. But we tried to take a recommendation that was disciplined, that was responsive to the charge from town meeting, from the goals that you all unanimously approved. And so the reason we're recommending option 2, the 37%, the $42,000, is because the goals we adopted were around emissions reductions, not carbon neutrality. Because the town meeting resolution that sort of has been the foundation of this whole thing all along is pretty specific about, and I'm sure Kurt is going to talk in a minute and say this should be 100%, because that's what was in the original resolution. But also that resolution that was overwhelmingly passed is specifically about, to me, the core of that resolution is make the town's municipal electricity 100% renewable. And option 2 does that, and option 1 does something different. It does something good. It does something about a sixth as good for about a sixth of the price. And it's sort of less directly responsive to what we've been talking about. So that's why the committee is recommending B instead of A, or, other more expensive things on that list. So we've tried to strike a balance and be disciplined.
Okay, thanks, Oscar. I just realized, apologies, I just looked at the time. So we need to take a break, but we don't need to be done talking about this, obviously. Can we take our break now? When we get back, we'll let Kurt Dimes make his comment. And then I would like to point out a couple things. And if you don't mind, Stephen, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your document that have not been covered, which I found very interesting. So anybody have any objection to taking a break right now? Okay, so we will take a break until 8:20. Does that work? Or 8:21 to give us the full 10-minute break. Thanks. It's just now just about 8:21. So when we left, I promised Kurt Dimes first comment, and then we'll move on from there. That's okay with everybody. Kurt?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'd like to read a bit of communication that I had with the town manager's office. It is about the resolution currently under discussion. Town manager's office sent me this on March 2018, March 24, representative town meeting under other business. Kurt Dimes, representing Brattleboro Common Sense, offered the following resolution. Whereas we have a moral duty to reduce the various pollutants that cause untold harm to people all over the world, and whereas our town, our country, and the world are threatened by climate disruption and the use of fossil fuels, and whereas our town plan recommends the use of renewable energy, and whereas Green Mountain Power Corporation operates a program called Cow Power for developing investments in renewable energy sources that can help us divest from fossil fuels at an additional cost of approximately $12 per person per year for electricity used in town buildings. Therefore, we, the town meeting members, advise the select board and town manager to purchase all the town buildings' electricity from renewable sources such as cow power. We further recommend that people of Brattleboro also should choose such electricity. And I got on November 16th, 2020, this message about the progress of this legislation through town government. I got your message, and I'm sorry it has taken me some time, but things are very complicated after the latest governor's order. Anyway, you called to ask where we are at. I'm sorry to say that too is complicated. After RTM in 2018 and at the April 17th, 2018 select board meeting, the board asked staff to examine the idea of cow power or a similar alternative. At their meeting on June 5th, 2018, staff returned with a slightly different idea of subsidizing a local renewable energy project rather than cow power. That would all be okay with the resolution. And the board agreed that staff should investigate. Some time passed, but then in September 17th, 2019, staff returned seeking the board's support to solicit letters of interest from local renewable energy projects. However, as we were beginning to solicit these letters, I began to meet with members of the Energy Committee and began to learn about the difference between renewable energy and carbon offsets. I was only slightly knowledgeable about renewables, but carbon offsets were brand new to me. After numerous meetings, I began to question if I were taking the right approach. After seeking the approval from the board to head in a particular direction, all of a sudden, I was beginning to wonder if I had made a poor recommendation. Having just hired a sustainability coordinator, I thought that I should remove myself from the discussion that I know very little about and give him the chance to work with the Energy Committee and make an informed recommendation to the board. The board accepted this idea at the meeting on February 4th, 2020.
Okay, Kurt.
So this is, please, Tim, I've been waiting for 3 years for this. You know, we've been waiting for 3 years for this.
You've been waiting to give us the entire history of how we got here. I think we all kind of know how we got here. We're trying to move forward.
Yeah, all right, I'm finished with that part. That was in November 2020. And I want to say it's kind of ironic we're calling this new business now. Daniel asked, you know, how this has come up. How this come up now? It came up because I sent you a letter a couple months ago saying, hey, where is this? Can you please put it on the ballot? I sent this to you and Tim, you recall? And it's on the ballot now because Brattleboro Common Sense didn't drop the ball since the resolution that the statewide resolution that Daniel did that in in the previous June of 2017. This resolution was supposed to put teeth in that, and 350 Vermont endorsed it. So what's aggravating me, what really scares me, is that it took so long to get almost nowhere now. Elizabeth wants to pinch pennies now, and this was an emergency. This was a climate emergency we're talking about, and 3 years into the process of ratifying it, you've got members on the board that are trying to pinch pennies.
Okay, Kurt.
I
think
would I be? I just want to say, I'll be finished in 30 seconds here. Denial comes in many forms, and some people are not who they think they are. And it's not to point fingers about this, except maybe at Daniel. Justice delayed.
Okay.
It's justice denied. It's justice denied. Please, we got to get this moving. Can't we do better?
I've just muted Kurt. I don't think it's appropriate what he just did. It was a direct attack on a board member. So I think you've had 5 minutes to say your piece. I'm not sure how helpful that is at all to the discussion we're trying to have. Daniel, you have first crack.
Thanks. I don't, it's fine. I'm a public figure such as I am. So
and it's election season.
I'm fair game, and it's election season. It's always election season, Tim. And, Kurt is feeling like the town is dragging its feet. I can see why he might think that. I don't think we are. I think that town staff and the energy committee and the sustainability coordinator and the select board has all taken a long time to consider this proposal. And, if we're going to speak kind of bluntly, sure. I'll say this, right? That a non-binding proposal at the end of a long town meeting does not have the same weight as a warned item earlier in the agenda when all are present. And, the resolution that I helped draft that was on the town meeting ballot of that same March, I had no illusions that even were this to be overwhelmingly supported, that it would suddenly lead to action. And Kurt's right. The reason why his cow power proposal moved forward and that resolution didn't is because he pushed it, right? And he's right about that. There were so many things in that resolution that, the group that I was part of at the time, which was 350 Brattleboro and 350 Vermont, which Kurt named just then, have been working on many aspects of those things, right? And one of the reasons why I ran for the select board is to do this kind of work. So Kurt can be upset that it's taken this long, and that's fine. I'm not upset about it because I know that things take a long time, and I'm happy and I'm patient enough to still be here to make a decision when it matters, right? So he can, point fingers or what have you, and that's fine. But I think that this is a good investment in renewable energy in the state. That is the way that I perceive this. Liz is right. It's going to cost us more for our electricity, right? So it's a question of, do we want to pay more for our electricity and generate it in a renewable way? Or do we want to just continue as we're doing? And business as usual is kind of how we ended up in this place. I don't think Brattleboro is the climate villain of America, but this is the only place I have the power to make any kind of change. And so I would like to see us invest in 100% renewable electricity in Brattleboro. And I think that we can do that. I think it's a modest investment. I used my little budget calculator. It will cost me, oh Lord, I got it right here. It's going to cost me an extra $5 a year in property taxes, and I'm okay with it. So,
okay, thank you.
I'm for it. I'm going to zip now, and I'd love for us to move forward.
Thanks, Daniel. Stephen has a hand up, so I'm going to invite you to. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what was going on with your screen. Stephen, did you want to comment on the last couple minutes? Because Liz has a
I
hand.
have what in Robert's Rules of Order would be called point of process, but on a larger scale, right?
Sure.
So just looking at, I've been trying to figure out how we got here because I came in the middle of the whole process, right? And from what I can tell, part of what caused a lot of chaos and perhaps disorder in how we usually aim to achieve things and set these projects in motion was that this didn't start with the Energy Committee. It started with town meeting and then moved around to different parts of staff without an anchoring within a citizen body that is informed and charged with these kinds of efforts. So all I want to say is to anyone who has similar ideas or proposals, the right place to start this conversation is with the Energy Committee so that we can help shape it and have it meet town goals and existing priorities within that agenda. And then we would have, if we had done that in this case, I think we would have avoided a lot of the confusion and rigmarole about what it was that we're trying to do and who's responsible to do it. So just moving forward, I think that's a very sound way to think about bringing ideas like this forward. And I wanted to chip in on that. And I think I have some questions to answer from you, Tim, eventually. So let me know.
Yeah, keep your image and audio up if you don't mind. Ian?
Oh, did I just jump in front of Liz though?
Good.
Oh, I might be sorry about that, Liz. Liz says go ahead.
I can continue my penny pinching at any time.
That's what I wanted to speak to. Just in light of that, I really don't condone direct attacks. And I think keeping this conversation civil and respectful is really important. And in that light, Tim, I just want to say I wasn't trying to attack you at all with my comments before. I just felt strongly that I wanted to make sure that we didn't get confused in this discussion because there is a lot going on here. So, but I really appreciate you bringing up all of the information. I can say for myself, this is my first year on the board, I had a lot of homework to do and try to understand exactly how we got here. So no, I really appreciate it. And I just want to keep the clarity and keep this conversation moving in a positive direction. So I appreciate your contribution that way. And I didn't intend any kind of attack.
Thank you. Thank you. Liz.
First, I wanted to get back to that resolution that Daniel wrote and say, gee, we are making progress on a lot of these things. And just want to remind people that, we're protecting town lands from fossil fuel infrastructure, aren't we, Daniel?
I should hope so.
Yeah. We're weatherizing town buildings. We're phasing out the use of fossil fuels to help heat town buildings. We're creating infrastructure to support biking and walking. And among them is this ask to use renewable energy for new and renovated town buildings. So my point is that we were given options. And one of them is for $6,954,000, and one of them is for $42,000. And $42,000 seems like an outsized contribution, an order of magnitude to cow power. And this almost $7,000 contribution is much more in the realm of appropriateness for a town to spend more money on its electricity than it has to.
Thanks, Liz. Daniel, do you have a direct?
I just want to rebut some of it. Because Liz, I know that you really care about acting on climate. I know that. And so Kurt framed it wrong. It's not about penny pinching. This is about saying that we know what we need to do as a nation in order to take action on climate change. And one of the things that we need to do is commit in a bold way to renewable energy. And so, yeah, we could do it at like $6,000 and that would not be nothing, but I think making that commitment, that's the nice thing about 100% goal. When you got there, you know, so we've already got a good mix, an energy mix from Green Mountain Power. And we're going to build on that with this 37% investment. And then we'll say that Brattleboro's electricity is, as far as most of us are concerned, 100% renewable. And it, you know, that's a great place to start. All that other work that you talked about in the resolution will be ongoing. If we were to build this wastewater treatment plant and it were not to be as efficient as possible and were to have heating sources that were fossil fuel powered, that would be a really bad decision. We did it not so long ago. You know, the police fire project should have been, you know, moving away from fossil fuels, but it didn't. And so this is just, when we have these decisions, we've got to take some bolder steps than we've been doing.
Ian, I'm really itching to ask my questions of Stephen Dotson, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll make it really quick then. I think I just want to couple that with just saying that all the work that went into this up to this point also makes me feel confident in that larger commitment. Because I agree, you know, it's a question of, you know, how much we want to put towards this, right? And I think we're all coming at this from the same direction of trying to make the town more sustainable, you know. And so I think if this didn't have all the staff work and committee work that went into this for multiple years at looking at alternatives, I would feel a lot more hesitant about the commitment for the larger amount, for the 43%, and or 47, I don't recall the number, but or 37%. There it is. Thank you. So I think it's, you know, that work is important to keep in mind, that you know, after all of that work, we've come to the decision that this is the best way for us to do this right now.
I just want to clarify that all that other work is brought to us for us to decide.
Absolutely. Stephen.
Tim.
Oh, wait, is that you, Liz? Okay. Hi, Stephen. So I just want to say one thing. The last time we visited, and one of the reasons I think Kurt is so frustrated is that we've been touching upon cow power over and over again. I've never been a fan, and I can explain why in a few minutes. But the last time we thought about this, we said, you know what, we're about to bring on an energy coordinator, a sustainability coordinator. And wouldn't this be a wonderful way to have somebody who's really concentrating on this stuff give us input on this decision, which is, you know, squishy is the word I like to use sometimes when I don't quite feel like I have a good handle on the realness of something, okay? Now, in the interim, I think what's happened was several people have pointed out, because a couple years ago, maybe it feels, for me, it feels like 2 months, but it was a couple years ago where we thought this solar array was getting us to 90% renewable. And we were all feeling really good about it. But as you point out in your report, that was sort of double dipping into this idea of renewable, right? So that's a really good thing to have, to be able to wrap my brain around. And so I'm accepting that, okay, we've been knocked from what we thought was about 90% and feeling really good about it as a town down to, what is it, 63%, you know, which is more, you're pointing out, more realistic. So, and you have a quote in your write-up here that you say electrons don't know where they come from. And I really like that quote, because that sort of applies, in my mind, that applies to how I feel about cow power. I think cow power is a pretty squishy thing. When you go to the cow power website, they're very clear. You can actually, you know, I printed this out because when you sign up for cow power, you can decide to go 100% cow power, which I guess takes all of what you use and adds the 4%, and that's 100%, or you can go 50%, you can go 25%. And right below that, they say it's impossible to track the flow of specific electrons on the regional electric power grid. And I'm thinking that's exactly what Stephen's talking about when electrons don't know where they come from, right? So And it goes on to explain that GMP cow power is designed to assure the customer charges go to pay for qualifying renewable energy certificates. First, from Vermont farm producers. Very cool. I mean, how can we not support that, right? Second, for tradable certificates from qualifying renewable sources as certified by Massachusetts and Connecticut. Well, not so great because we're Vermont, and past boards have argued about this so much because we wanted Vermont specific things. Or third, are made to the GMP Renewable Development Fund to provide incentives for Vermont farm generation development in accordance with the terms and conditions of this rider as approved by state regulators. Wow, how inspiring. You know, like, I don't even know what that means. And I bet no one here knows what that means, right? So I don't like cow power because I think it's just a vehicle to be able to say I'm 100% renewable. Whereas when I go to your excellent little write-up you did for us, you gave us a bunch of options. Liz has pointed out that, you know, that there's cheaper options or whatever. And I think that's, when you're a taxpayer, that's a valuable thing to consider. But what really drew my eye was your number 5, which is because you highlighted 2 areas, the recommendation that the committee made. And number 5 is to invest in a consultant to perform a carbon sequestration inventory of Brattleboro to identify a baseline. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I understand all of that, but from what I understand from your memo, it's in line with existing town goal of completing a natural resource inventory that was listed for the sustainability coordinator during the formation of the position. So in other words, we take an inventory of the carbon sequestration capabilities that our community has. Do I have that correct? And we sort of, you know, we look at our carbon impact overall. I don't want to go too far without getting something horribly wrong. So I'm just looking for.
No, I get it. It's a dark science right now. And what I was trying to balance in my memo was consideration, as I had seen it through the correspondence that was sent to me from the past about this whole conversation, which involved consideration of a number of different goals. And so what you see in my memo is trying to represent all of those, but also highlight those goals which were just passed and reinforced by the Select Board and the Energy Committee. So in that mix was, as goals, let's invest in in-state renewables, right? Which, as far as I can see it, the cow power program is the most direct and reliable way to do so. And you're right that if oversubscribed, it purchases those renewable energy certificates from other states. But Oscar has done a lot of due diligence on this point and has found out that the program is massively undersubscribed, essentially. And so it's a low possibility within this current year and foreseeable future that contingency would be drawn on. Those, if we don't have farms to pull this energy from, this electricity from, I should be more specific, will go out of state. To be clear, out of state is where our waste, where that landfill array went, just to be clear. So that gives you an example of how that whole economy works, right? Separate from that whole discussion, just to be clear, was this question of, well, how much could cow power offset as a generation technique? Because it's different than other energy generations. It's using a pollutant as the source. And so in some ways, the science could argue that you're actually carbon negative. You're actually pulling out of the environment, GHG equivalents, because methane is actually more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, but they do the same thing, right? That doesn't equate in the renewable energy standard. I'm sorry, I'm getting into the weeds on this, but this is to say, if the town were to ever consider offsetting its carbon by purchasing offsets, I really recommend that before we do so, we start to account for and value the amount that we're already sequestering in our managed lands. And other towns have done this, and it gives you the net neutrality, both the emissions and the sequestration equal net neutrality in the end. And that does service to generations of Vermonters who have maintained forests to this state, who have sequestered carbon for decades, and you know, and that's part of what's important to me. We can value conservation and different land use approaches if we start to think about that, and we shouldn't purchase offsets until we've accounted for those things, because there's a lot of value generationally that we've stocked in our working lands. So that's what that part is. They're a little separate, and it's me trying to point out, okay, we had a number of different goals here. Here are the different ways I could see us meeting those. Here are my top recommendations for those goals.
Thank you for that summary. And actually, it goes along with what I read, that even the RNG, as they call it, the renewable natural gas, is not even considered an offsetting activity, really, by anybody, certainly not by the state, right?
Well, what I suspect, and I haven't checked, is that it's an offsetting activity for the farmers, right? It's I suspect that it may be that we as the consumer can't take credit for it because the farmers actually have the pollutant that they're required to manage. And so their elimination of methane from their operations is actually on their side of the equation.
Okay. I think it just gets, I wanted to just highlight that you've been able or started to do some really important work. And I wanted to highlight that item number 5, because that feels to me like more a real thing than signing off on something and being able to, I'm not that interested in being able to tell a constituents that we're 100% renewable. I'd rather tell them, you know, we're definitely buying into cow power because it's a worthwhile activity to do right now, given the lack of options, and especially the lack of local options. But I'd like to also make an investment in exactly what you're describing, which is to go forward with the sequestration inventory. I think we could do both, but I'm not really interested in going full into $42,000 being thrown so that I can say to somebody, well, we're 100% renewable asterisk, depending on how you want to define renewable, depending on who you ask. Honestly, Daniel, I saw that smile, but I'm kind of right, aren't I? It's not, there's no one definition of renewable, and you can get really into the idea of,
I mean, cow poop is pretty renewable. It's going to happen every day, and then it's going to pollute, but we're diverting that pollution and turning it into electricity. Isn't that kind of amazing?
It's very cool. It's very cool, but it's not going to power all of our lights.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it will power something. Those, you know, as already mentioned. You know what else doesn't know where it goes? Emissions, right? Emissions do have a local impact, right? But like when we're talking about cross-border kind of investment and whatnot, right? Yeah, we don't really want to be spending Brattleboro taxpayer money on renewable energy projects outside of our borders. But the emissions from other neighboring states and counties and towns impact us. China. You know, we are all connected. COVID has reminded us all of how interconnected we are. So by investing in renewable energy in Vermont, you know, it is a good thing for us to do. Whether we can feel like, yay, we got the 100% badge, you know, whatever. If we shy away from investing in renewable energy, we're moving in the wrong direction.
I got you there. Liz?
I like that suggestion you had, Tim, of doing item 1 and item 5 together, because Stephen's memo suggests, you know, we do both the 42,000 and the invest in a consultant to perform carbon sequestration inventory. But I think number 1 and number 5 is the best idea for Brattleboro specifically to, you know, make the cow power investment, but more of a placeholder until Brattleboro really finds out the best thing for us to do for ourselves and what we have here in terms of our current situation with regard to carbon. So I kind of like that compromise position of 1 and 5, even though Stephen does not mention how much number 5 would cost.
I bet it would be a lot
Right.
more than 42,000.
It may be he, you know,
It
some
may
of
be.
that would be part of his own job description. I'm not sure, but I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, I'm not sure we can do that like horse trading under this agenda item, honestly, but we could certainly start down that path and roll staff into maybe 2 months down the road. Might not have to, can't happen before next Tuesday or the following Tuesday. But to go in that direction rather than, I'm sorry, I guess I'm stubbornly against a full investment of that magnitude into cow power because I think it's not perfect for what this town wants to do. Stephen, and what maybe I should we bring Oscar back to ask if the committee, I'm forgive my, I'm not quite sure how did your write-up, Stephen, go to the committee first, or did it happen in reverse?
No, I informed the committee and they made a proposal, but Oscar and I have been wrestling with this along with other people in town staff ever since I started. So,
and it's not a simple question, so that's completely understandable. And I'm very grateful that the committee put on all the time that they did. So that's, I just wanted to ask Oscar maybe if he wanted to comment on, you know, was there some committee talk about the number 5, which was the other highlighted in bold from Stephen's document?
Yeah, I would like to comment. There was talk about it. It's something that will 100% have to happen for us to achieve the goals we set. There is no way that we can say that we've met those goals without performing some kind of inventory of both our entire community use and sequestration. So this will happen somehow in the next, it's only 29 years between now and 2050. So sometime in the next 29 years, this process will have to be done. I would be pretty disappointed if you guys picked that today, and I would worry. I feel like we're in the speaking frankly portion of the night. Sincerely, with all respect, I would worry that you're picking it because it has no price tag attached to it right now. It would be very expensive. It would be a multi-year process. The example for something like this is a report put out by the town of Phillipstown, New York. Essentially revolutionary. It had multiple staff, at least 2 or 3, I think, essentially full-time staff people working on it with outside grants. It's a heavy-duty process, and it would feel, I wouldn't feel great about that because we wouldn't have to feel the pain of that decision right now, right? We would say, yes, this is important. Sounds great. Let's do it. I feel like I'm upsetting you, Tim, but
no, it's the pain of that decision. Like, I don't think it's necessary for us to feel pain to do what's right for the town. So I apologize. It was my reaction to that.
No, I mean, I want to see your reactions and I want to hear your reactions and
in a normal board meeting, I would have been hiding behind somebody.
No, well then this is better then. I think that for when you're making important decisions, you should be aware of the pain of those decisions, not in a violent sense, but in a way that I think the immediate reaction you would have if I came to the next meeting and said, hey, I want $500,000 for a new music venue in the park, right? I think your first reaction would be like, oh, like, no, that's crazy. That would be damaging to the budget. That would be damaging to the town. If you're into it, we can do it at the next meeting. That's fine. But and clearly the idea of $42,000 is a little painful. I don't really think it should be. I mean, I'm not telling anyone how to feel, but it's a very small fraction of the budget. It's 4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the same rate that anyone else would pay. And it's not the full investment. This is not what town meeting asked for. Town meeting asked for 100% purchase, which would be, you know, about 3 times that. Yes. To purchase all the town buildings, electricity, et cetera, from renewable sources such as cow power. That's been the frame for this discussion, which would be about $120,000 a year. So, and I think I am probably disappointing and angering people in the activist circles by making this smaller proposal. But I think, yeah, so I would love for us to enter into a longer process. I wouldn't want us to do it without a real understanding of the budgetary commitment that would really mean. I don't think you would be in love with it because it would be substantial. And the other thing about the sequestration inventory is that it doesn't change anything. It's very important. It's a vital step. But if we perform that inventory at the end of it, it's almost the definition of we will know exactly how good we get to feel about the fact that we have acres of beautiful forests and green spaces and relatively low population and stuff like that. But it will have changed nothing. Whereas if we buy this cow power, yes, who knows what electron goes where, et cetera, but we've made a real tangible investment that makes a difference day one. So I think I just want to say on behalf of the committee, we still recommend option 2. I think option 5 should be a longer conversation, and we also like that. But I still think option 2 is the sweet spot, and the missing option 3 of $120,000 should be in the context of that too. The option 3 that's not on the list. Okay. The option 3 of buying 100% cow power.
Oh, I see. Stephen, because Stephen's had his hand up, and then Daniel, if you want.
Just quick clarification on that whole carbon sequestration analysis. It needs to be done by a trained expert in forestry and carbon sequestration. And I've been working with the Vermont Land Trust and others to track down those people who have that expertise in our state. And I've been presenting it to the body that I felt actually has the say over it, which isn't the Energy Committee, it's the Conservation Commission, excuse me. In my mind, I have 2 engines to solve carbon. One is on the energy and emissions, and that's Energy Committee. And then there's conservation and sequestration, and that's the Conservation Commission. So I would encourage you all to expect a different, very nuanced and detailed proposal once we do our due diligence around that work, but for it to come through an entirely different group. You saw me trying to separate the responsibilities of committees in the memo that I sent to the Energy Committee, and repeatedly in that memo, you'll see me flag, this is a conversation with the Conservation Commission, because it does more than just tell us where we're at. It tells us how much more we can value our forests and farmlands if we were to institute things like no-till farming and increased forestry management for carbon sequestration. So it's not just where we're at, it's where we can be and why we can value the lands we have in a new way, encourage conservation in that light. So just to say, I see it as a different conversation that should be heralded by a separate committee in town in that sense. So if we can separate the two and consider this as an emissions choice and carbon sequestration as a different conversation with the Conservation Commission, I think you'll get the best information that way.
Okay, thank you. I do want to just make it clear that I think in the long term that that's a better course for Brattleboro and not hitching our money and our efforts to Cow Power, which I think is a very imperfect program. Daniel had his hand up, and so did Desi for a while. So
yeah, I mean, I would like to hear more from the committee members. I guess I would then like to just speak briefly to a couple of things.
Okay, Desi, you want to shoot?
I'll just be clear. My name's not actually Desi. I think I tried to say that in the beginning. It's actually Django, but Desi.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were saying to me early on that your name's not Django, it's Desi. I totally got that backwards. Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
Django.
I want to bring up the point that unanimously at the last select board meeting I was at, the board voted on a set of goals that is perfectly in line with this Cow Power proposal. It's a tangible solution. It's directly taking carbon from the air and putting it into energy that is being used by this town. Sorry, I'm trying not to get aggressive with this, but I beg you all to look at this as not an issue of monetary worth, which it obviously is. This is a huge amount of money, and I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, it's not changing the fact that at this point we have 7 years. And I hate to bring that up, and I hate to bring the doomsday aspect into it, but we're running out of time. And for you to, for this to be kind of, to choose the smaller option at this point, for me, is going against what you voted against going against what you voted for at the last meeting. That's all I'd like to say.
Thanks. Daniel, you still have the stick if you want it. What was that? In the story where they hold the stick? Is that?
Maybe Oscar wants to say something. I feel I will, whatever it is, he can have my time.
I won't take too much of it. I think we had a talking stick at summer camp I went to. Maybe that's
absolutely.
So I just want to talk about, I mean, obviously the select board has to make its own decisions and has to apply its own judgment, and not just, I agree with what Daniel said. It's not your job to rubber stamp decisions, non-binding resolutions passed at the end of a long town meeting where maybe there wasn't even a quorum anymore, right? Like I completely understand that, and I'm not, but I think in these various different ways, it's pretty, I haven't seen anything contrary from town meeting or from the voters or anything like that, contrary to the idea that the town, the constituency in general would like to see this, an investment in Cow Power, would like to see the town government use 100% renewable electricity. I think it's pretty hard to look at the breadcrumbs over the last couple years, and sure, you could say it's not conclusive, but I don't think there's another story to tell really when you look at it that way. I don't think there's an alternative story there. I think Cow Power, Tim, I know you have reservations. I think it's actually a really great fit for this because of the chance to make a local investment, the chance to make a farm investment. And I just want to talk quickly about some of the technical things there. One is that we had all the same concerns you had, and Stephen already spoke about this a little bit, about all the asterisks on the Cow Power program, about how they'll buy renewable energy credits, how they'll put it into a fund, etc. I called and I spoke to Josh Cassengay at Green Mountain Power, and he assured me that the program is so undersubscribed right now that even if, like, there's room for basically 3 times the town's total electricity usage, and we're talking about a third of that. So I think we can set aside those concerns as something that, if in 5 years Green Mountain Power tells us, hey, we're getting near the subscription and we can't get any new farms going, then we can reevaluate. But right now, I think those outcomes are not really on a realistic concern. You know what I mean? Because it's so undersubscribed, I don't think there's any way we would get anything other than the like top of the label cow power as described stuff, unless Green Mountain Power is just making stuff up when they talk to me. And the other thing about the squishiness of the program, and I think understandable frustration over sort of the mechanics of renewable energy credits and how that stuff gets allocated. There's really no energy source that would be better, right? Like if we subscribed 37% to some new array, it would be a solar array. It would be the exact same situation in that we would be paying for the construction of an array. That electricity would go out into the grid, and because we paid for it, we would get to take credit for it, right? And none of us really care about getting to take credit for it, but that's kind of the mechanism that makes sure that everyone who sees the article about that plant going up doesn't say, oh, well, my energy is now 100% renewable because that plant produces as much as I use, right? Like you sort of have to divide up the credit, otherwise it gets double and triple counted, which is bad. So there's no source of renewable electricity that would be without the squishiness. I think we all agree to different degrees that renewable electricity is important. I think that's clearly, there's a pretty clear voice that the town meeting and the voters are speaking with, asking for the town to use renewable electricity. Personally, I think cow power is the perfect vehicle. And I think with option B, we're already taking sort of a compromise versus what some people really want. So I don't know. I think that unless you, well, to me, I think that the town is speaking pretty clearly on this, and this is a relatively small amount of money and a reliable program. We have relationships with Green Mountain Power. This is not going to be something that just goes upside down overnight. I don't know. I think this is the way. I think this is the decision to make. Obviously, that's why this is the recommendation we're making. But I'm trying to be politic. But I think I share a little of Kurt's frustration. I'm not condoning the tone or the tactics, which, enough said about that. But this has been going for 3 years, and it would be one thing to say, I don't know, at a certain point you just have to say, okay, we don't really want to do what town meeting asked for, or to say, okay, well, this is not really my thing and I have my reservations, but town meeting seems to pretty clearly want this.
Can I just
let's do it.
clarify something there?
Sure.
You keep saying that clearly it's the will of the voters, but in both cases that we're talking about, the voters are saying, and the voters and or town meeting, as Daniel points out at the end of the meeting, are talking about town buildings, right?
They are, but that I can't even think.
And that's honestly, but you can't simultaneously tell me that I'm not honoring the will of the voters when I'm exploring every way. And even Kurt came on to tell us that he used the term buildings.
Yeah, but so what other major off-takers of electricity are you imagining? I mean,
I'm sorry?
What other major uses of electricity are you imagining? I mean, we're not talking about streetlights, I don't think. I think that's its own separate. I mean,
everything is in here, right, Peter?
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Right, but buildings
and streetlights.
Don't tell me that we're not honoring the will of the voters when we are honoring the will of the voters with a much smaller investment. Liz?
But the will.
Yeah. So, Oscar, at the end of Stephen's memo, it clearly states that what the difference between town buildings and all town electricity. And that's the difference between the $7,000 and the $42,000.
Sorry,
and all I'm saying is if you want to be consistent with what the will of the voters and the will of they said buildings. So I'm saying, okay, let's do the buildings. Let's pay the $7,000 to Cow Power to do what we said we were going to do, and let's not expand it to an enormous degree that Cow Power has never seen.
No, Liz, I think there's a misunderstanding. The 7% would be to make the electricity carbon neutral. The $7,000, it's not that the 7,000 is buildings and the 42,000 is everything. 7,000 is the difference between going from 93% carbon neutral to 100% carbon neutral. 43,000 is the difference between going 63% renewable to 100%. So I may be crossing some wires here and there, but that's not what those two numbers are. So I'm sorry if
I want to know what those two numbers really are. I want to know the buildings versus all the town. And, you know, I don't think that we're going to come to a resolution tonight because two people say one thing and two people say another. So in the meantime, why doesn't someone come back and tell us what the difference between town buildings and all town electricity is?
I'm sorry, can I respond to that?
Sure.
I may be misreading this, but I'm bothered by the idea that you think that we're coming here and giving you different numbers. I think there've been some misunderstandings.
No. I fully admit that I may be misunderstanding, not understanding, but I know that there's this difference between all town electricity and town buildings. And if someone could clarify that for me and put it in relation to the Cow Power thing, I would be eternally grateful, because that is what my understanding is of the will of the voters.
Okay, I am more than happy to do that.
Oscar, could I? Because this is my data.
Certainly, and yes, of course.
Yeah, I can straighten this out really quickly, and I think it's actually due to a mislabeling in my spreadsheet, and so I apologize, because I listed one as carbon neutral electricity for all town buildings. I labeled the other, they both should be only specific to town buildings. We are not talking about the entire community of Brattleboro having their electricity being subsidized by the town. I want to make that explicitly clear right now, because that's the misunderstanding.
Stephen, we get that. We get that. Peter's
okay.
Clarify.
Now there's two misunderstandings.
Well, then the difference is between renewable and carbon neutral.
Yeah, may I
Hold on.
please?
There's a couple different things going on simultaneously. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. So yes, there is confusion because of the labeling, and that is central to much of what's been discussed tonight, because the smaller number speaks to carbon neutrality and the larger number speaks to 100% renewable. It's also true, though, that the town's consumption of electricity includes use of electricity outside of buildings, most particularly streetlights. We spend a couple $100,000 or $140,000 a year paying the electric bill for the streetlights. And there are other things too. The traffic signal system is, a separate outdoor lighted consumption of electricity, and there's more. And so I think actually if I might do that thing that I sometimes do where I get big for my britches and say, can we stop for tonight and do something that staff can do to help you for next time? I think Liz is right. With only 4 of you here tonight, and as fully as you've discussed this, that we're not going to get 3 votes for a particular solution that folks feel good about, right? And a central part of the discussion tonight has been consumption of electricity in buildings versus total consumption of electricity. Stephen spoke very accurately a few minutes ago to the idea that we're only talking about town of Brattleboro, capital T. That's also been a point of confusion at some times in the past. I think tonight it has not been. That tonight we've only been talking about the town with a capital T, not the community and all the private consumption. But even within the town with a capital T, we do consume electricity in ways that don't involve buildings that are occupied by people.
Wastewater treatment plants, for instance.
Yeah, which, is arguably a building too, but it's a different kind of building. So I think that allowing us a little bit of space, and it wouldn't be for 2 weeks from tonight, but it also wouldn't be for 2 months from now. But, a little bit of space to bring you back some additional staff analysis that doesn't try to go further into the advocacy for one solution or another. I think there's plenty of that already on board here with the Energy Committee's recommendation and the consideration that the Select Board is giving to this. But where we as staff can do what we're uniquely well positioned to do, which is take what we've heard from you and the additional more granular breakdown that you're looking for, some of you at least are looking for, so that if you can see a classification of buildings like office buildings and library and stuff like that, and then, you know, like utility facilities, right? And then the stuff that isn't buildings, you know, give us a little time to think about what the appropriate breakdowns would be. But it might be not just buildings and non-buildings. It might be more granular than that. And I think we can help you then the next time we're back, when we show you the results of that work, help you as a group try to find your sweet spot. Because I hear all of you wanting to do this, but pretty divided on how to deal with the decision in front of you based on the data that's in front of you.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I could accept that because I think we could all get a win if yeah, Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think based on the current standing of the board, that makes a lot of sense on how we move forward productively. My one thought that just came to my mind that hasn't been discussed at all tonight, so I just wanted to bring it up as we're sort of wrapping up, is did we ask Green Mountain Power whether they'd cut us a deal if we were to go with option 2 because it was such a large investment?
Oh, that's a good idea.
You know, say kind of.
Wait a minute. Would it be painful enough?
No, the penny pincher in me loves that idea.
I'm happy to ask, just to say, and you know, I wrestle with railroads, I wrestle with utilities. My experience is that they don't have any interest in cutting us a deal. There's no interest for them, but I will try.
I've never seen an investment of this size.
Let us hope they see it that way, Liz. I'd love for that to be the case, and I will report back to you.
Okay.
I want to make it clear that I said that comment just for comedy's sake. You know, and so did Liz, I'm sure. Daniel.
So helpful discussion. When Liz was kind of speaking to what she was looking for to help make a decision, I'm mostly in agreement. The resolution, and so this is to speaking to your point as well, Tim, the resolution, the cow power resolution, the non-binding end of town meeting, any other business cow power resolution speaks to town buildings. The resolution that I helped draft has one element of it, which was really targeted at, please don't build any more buildings without, you know, actually powering them with renewable energy. Thanks very much. Because of the police fire project. You know, so those two things are speaking to buildings, and that's fine. We can just go with, you know, what it said in the resolution. But we've also had a lot of work done on this in the meantime. We've also moved forward a couple of years, and I don't want us to like get too sort of happy with ourselves that like, oh, we did it for buildings, right? Because we've seen the list of electricity accounts, and it is not only buildings that we should consider, but I will be happy to see the numbers on just buildings. I want the wastewater treatment plant considered as a building, because if it is not that, then I don't know what it is.
Well, it's an infrastructure technically, but
yeah,
we don't need
I would say all those. I looked at the list of accounts.
That's more than a building
like,
does.
Right. Yeah, it does a lot. It uses a lot of electricity, right? That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why we need to be focused more on usage and not spending the kilowatt hours rather than
the best kilowatt hour is the negawatt.
Yeah, megawatts. Yes.
The negawatt. You don't use it.
Megawatts. I like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I would be up for a discussion when there are 5 board members present on the amount of usage for buildings.
And Peter, I'm sorry, but we got to hold your feet. It's got to be next Tuesday so that it's the same board. Absolutely the same board.
Next Tuesday or the Tuesday? Oh, you mean like
you know,
the next
hour
meeting?
Next Tuesday. Sorry.
Yeah, you will still be the same board throughout.
March.
Well,
Throughout
until
March.
March 22nd, not throughout March,
Oh,
but
I
until
guess
March
I'm thinking
22nd.
like
Lame duck.
no lame ducks.
I hear what you're saying, and that's fine. It actually, if we can produce it in time for March 2nd, we will. I think we might need till March 16th, but
Okay.
March 16th, you'll still be the same board.
I know. I guess I've just got this line in my head, and it's March 2nd somehow.
May I
I'm
offer?
I'm trying to honor the will of this current board versus the next.
Yes, I hear that, and I think we can meet that for you. I'd like to speak to what I see us bringing back, because I don't want it to feel like it's not what you expected. And I've heard it described a couple of different ways by you, and here's my take on it. I think that we should bring it to you in the most granular way that makes sense to us. We're not going to go crazy. We're not going to contrive separations. But for instance, on the question of a building, you know, there are buildings that are occupied mostly by town employees. There are buildings that are for the public's benefit primarily, with a few employees there. And there are utility buildings that are almost never occupied by people, right? Our pump stations consume a lot of electricity, and they get visited by the utility staff, but nobody works there. And so I don't know all the different categories. I can't name them off the top of my head, because we need to kind of look at it and make sense of the data. But I want to make sure that we don't offend your sensibilities if we bring you back something that divides it more than some of you want to see it divided. Because what I'm hoping we can do to help the group make a decision is bring it to you in a granular enough manner, while still being, you know, maintaining the integrity of the data, that together you can find that sweet spot. Some of you will continue to advocate for 100% of the town's electricity bills being in this calculation, and others of you will define buildings or whatever other subset is what you advocate for. And therein lies your policy decision, I think. But if we don't bring the data to you in a pretty granular form, you can't make those choices. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. But Daniel's right. Buildings are buildings. Ian.
If it's got walls and a roof, it's a building.
And actually, should we just go through each building in Brattleboro right now? We can classify whether it's a building or not. No, the one question I have, Peter, is in that bit of work, do you think it would be worthwhile doing a couple of calculations in there? So have it all granular, but then, you know, if you were to for example, say, what would it be if you took every brick and mortar building that had a roof and you did all of that? Can we get a number there? Like, because I think like if we have numbers in our next discussion, it's going to move this it's going to be much easier to move around with this then.
So here's what I would suggest then in response to that, and see if the four of you can feel good about this. We will do a more granular analysis, and then we will do some combining of categories, so that, for instance, we can tell you without you having to do the math yourself, of even though we might have a few different classifications of buildings, if it's got 4 walls and a roof, you know, we can put those classifications together and say, you know, classifications A, B, and C together constitute the full universe of our buildings, and therefore that grouping is equal to X, whatever, right? So yes, we can do a little bit of that mixing and matching. What I would ask you to appreciate is we want to be careful in the work that we're doing to assist you in making a decision about a recommendation that's already been presented to you by your energy committee. We as staff want to be careful that we don't present the data in a manner that suggests this is the smart way, not that. We're trying to respect the policy decision that remains here for you. And you've had a very robust conversation tonight about aspects of this, right? And we could present the data to you in a manner that limits your choices. I'm trying to get us to a place where we can give you some room to work with it. But I hear what you're saying, Ian, that you know, there are certain groupings, let's call them, of these more granular classifications that have already been discussed tonight. And in that context, I think, you know, we can be true to that without steering you too much one way or the other. But I want you to appreciate that what we're going to be striving to be really careful not to do is present it in a manner that says, you know, either you do this or you haven't done the right thing. There's plenty of folks in the community well equipped to advocate about, you know, what is the one best thing. And what we're trying to do is bring you the information that helps you make the policy decision you need to make after hearing all that.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Oscar, closing remarks from the committee?
Yes, this is not from the committee. This is just from me.
Okay.
I feel like I have a responsibility to myself to say this. I'm very disappointed. I know that you may think that you're acting with rigor and attention to detail, but listening to the last 5 minutes and the sense of, to me, palpable relief and good cheer as you were able to get down to the much more grappleable question of how to subdivide this up, how to turn it over for another 2 weeks, how to lean back on numbers again, and that this conversation should end tonight with a discussion about the definition of what and what is not a building. May seem trivial, but to me, this is the kind of thing that in 20 years, if someone watches the video of this meeting, someone who's being born today watches this in 20 years, they will say, what were you, how was this the tenor of your conversation? I've listened to conversations on this board about things like the discussion about establishing parklets, the excitement and enthusiasm. There was not a single, there were a couple questions about what happens to these when we're done. Does the town own the cement things and et cetera? But just the tone could not be more different. And I'm just, I don't know why it's all landing on me at this one moment. I'm just, and I know this is probably not the end of the world for this proposal. This proposal is not going to make or break anything for anybody in the world, in Brattleboro or elsewhere, but it's such a small step. And the eye went right to the smallest number with a $sign in front of it. And then the discussion went about how to divide the cookie as small as possible by whatever technicality possible. And I know all of you have an understanding and an appreciation of climate change. So, and that's what's so crazy about this. I know I'm not talking to oil executives and I'm not talking to climate deniers here. But it's just, it's crushing. It's crazy. It's just death by 1,000 cuts, and it's been happening for 30 years. And I don't want to talk about it tonight. I feel like the conversation's sort of run its course, but if it's possible for you to ignore, if you can find a way to ignore the way that this has, what I've just said has probably felt personal, because these aren't planned remarks or anything, and try to see how I'm seeing this and how I'm seeing people in the future seeing this. I hope. Yeah, anyway.
Well, you know, I feel like now I have to respond to that, because I think that someone hasn't been listening to the way I've been talking about cow power. And I think it's just as likely many years from now, people will look back at us and thinking, really, it was cow power you thought was going to save your planet? Because it's not, in my opinion. It's not. So we're talking about strategy of what's better for Brattleboro here. And that's exactly in the wheelhouse of our job. Okay. So in your recommendation, in your first paragraph, you say, you imply at least, that the town of Brattleboro's voters want us to pass this thing, and yet the thing has expanded. So that's what all this arguing has been about.
I don't think so.
Okay, we don't need to get into a back and forth.
This is exactly how I.
And honestly, we're not kicking it down the road, and we're not denying anything. We are saying, hey, staff, could you help us get to a sweet spot so that we can accept your recommendation? Liz and I think that throwing $42,000 at GMP is not going to save our world. And by the way, Django, I don't think the world's going to end in 7 years. Sorry, I have a very strong disagreement to that. But like, I think you're managing to pull out a sense of defeat from a victory here. And it's very messy the way the sausage is made, but this is how we do it.
Oh,
Daniel.
Tim.
So I'm not going to respond to Oscar as I'm not trying to defend. I actually hear Oscar's frustration and share it. And that as a board of 4 educated, caring, diligent people, I mean, obviously there should be 5 of us here, but there aren't. But the 4 of us who are here today, the fact that we cannot decide to make this investment in renewable energy is a microcosm of this nation's failure to act over the last several decades. And I hope that when we come back to this in a couple of weeks' time, we can think about this as an investment in renewable energy as opposed to an expense. It's an investment. Parklets, yeah, those parklets were not cheap. What was it, 15 grand we spent on those? And it was the right thing to do at the time, and I'm glad that we did it. And not every dollar that we spend on the select board is the same, right? Everything has its moment and its reason. And I do hope that we will make this investment, and we will make it at the level that the majority of the board can stomach, because that's just how the sausage gets made, as Tim said. But it is. Did something just happen? My headphones just went weird. You can hear me okay? Yeah, we are called in these moments to act on a massive crisis that is way bigger than us, that is, far greater than any one of us can impact. And we get to do our small little bits. And this is one of our small little bits that we can do. And I hope that we will do it in a couple of weeks' time. And I'll just leave it there. But I do hear you, Oscar, and I share your frustration. And that's not directed at individuals on this board. I think we are all culpable within our culture at large.
Liz.
Well, I think this is a very complex issue. And we were presented with a complex set of alternatives and even a variety of recommendations. So I don't think that there's anything inappropriate with us asking for clarifications. But I will say that the greatest thing that happened for this planet happened on January 20th, because boom, day 1, Biden reversed all the horrible policies of the Trump presidency, including about methane gas. So we can spend a certain amount of money on cow power, but right away, the federal government has made a great stride for capturing methane gas. So I just think we all need to put all these pieces together and figure out what's right for Brattleboro. And no one is abandoning this quest we're just gonna get more information.
Ian?
Because everybody else spoke. Yeah, Oscar, thank you. Thank you for voicing that. And I really hear it. And I just want to say that I am still fully in support of the 37% full investment. And I would encourage the rest of the board, when we get the additional staff work, to keep an open mind to the full option 2. And I also really want to commend Tim for keeping this within this board, even if it's in a lame duck session. I think I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I also want to point out, since we're being so blunt today, that it would have been easy for Liz and I to just vote, and then this would die. So that, huh?
Wouldn't it be?
It would be a 2-2 vote.
A 2-2 is not a passing vote. It's a failure of a vote. So what I'm saying is that we want to see this process through. So that's why these implications, at least, of being part of a large history of doing the wrong thing on climate, I find it insulting.
Nothing.
What?
Or doing nothing.
Doing nothing. Look at Brattleboro's history. We do a lot of tangible things over and over and over again. And then we are presented at our meetings sometimes with, if you don't do this, you are the enemy. And that's the kind of simple either or thinking, which I've read a lot about white supremacy recently, and that's one of the theories of the support of white supremacy, is that you go to an either or thinking, and it's something that should be rejected by the new thinking when you're fighting against white supremacy. So I just find it very interesting that sometimes an activist will tell me that talking through something and finding a good solution to my town is being, the bad guy. And if that's the case, then I'm happy to be the bad guy. But I don't think most people think that way. I hope that most people don't think that way.
That's quite a way to respond to the words that I said earlier.
No, Oscar.
Okay.
I was not.
If I misunderstood that, I apologize. It seemed like a direct comment on me. If it wasn't, then I misunderstood.
No, I mean, I'm getting a little. I apologize if it sounded like a direct comment, but I'm talking about the gestalt of some of the language that we hear coming from people who are possibly correctly frustrated at what they see as lack of progress. But I've heard, and I'm not talking about you, Oscar, at all. I was a little frustrated at your needing to tell us how frustrated with you that you were with this process, when I thought that, sure, it's messy and we're going to wait a couple more meetings, but I think that we're getting to a good outcome. And we've unanimously, the four of us, have expressed our appreciation for the work of the committee and supporting cow power. And even though I've explained, I thought pretty well, why I don't like cow power and buying into it at all, I'm definitely willing to chip into it so that we can honor the will of our voters. But then figuring out what the actual will was is an important part of our job. So yeah, I mean, there have been other comments implying that there was a clear will about cow power, and we've been refusing, who I'm referring to probably, but we've been refusing to talk about it. I don't think that's a valid argument because we keep returning to it. This board decided to come back to it after we had a sustainability coordinator. And so here we are, we have a sustainability coordinator. He's added a rich amount of information and perspective. And that's what we're doing. We're talking about it. We prioritize. We as a board have decided maybe it's not the highest priority that we need to deal with, but it's a good high priority. So much so that we don't want to kick it down the road to the next board. We need a little more information. So I'm sorry to go on to just, I think it was the sort of everything kind of building up with me. And Oscar, to your credit, you spoke very eloquently, and I feel your frustration, and I felt like it was okay to share my frustration with some of this process that we go through on several issues, actually. But it's okay. So there have been some hands up. At this point, I'm feeling like taking the hands that have not spoken to this subject matter. Does the board want to do that, or should we just move on?
I mean, did we not just make an agreement that we would get some more information and bring it back in our next meeting?
We did. Just trying to be fair.
I mean, I haven't put his hand down, so yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. I'm pretty excited about our next subject, and hopefully it'll be a nice way to end the meeting. Thank you, Oscar, Django, and the entire committee.
Stephen.
And Stephen, of course. All right, our final, is it our final agenda item?
Yes, it is.
Yes, okay. Final agenda item in new business is to consider the renaming of a portion of Elm Street, which should not be called Elm Street because there's already a longer Elm Street. And Peter, do you want to tell us that story?
Sure. So everybody who's been in Vermont for the last couple of decades will remember that there came a time when virtually every property in the state got renumbered. There were some changes to the names of streets and roads at that time, particularly in rural areas. There were some roads that were renamed. They weren't, Town Highway 47, they became a name to distinguish them from others. But that happened because of the implementation of a system called E911, where it was a public safety measure to make sure that there was clarity to addresses. So you weren't just sort of out on the rural road, the fourth farm on the right or something, but instead had a specific numbered address. In towns like Brattleboro, where we didn't have that potential confusion of the rural nature leading to lack of numbers, the same numbering system that was applied in the rural areas was applied here. And so most homes and buildings got renumbered at that time. And it's why when you go down a street in Vermont, you tend not to see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 on one side and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 over on the other side, because there's a system that is based on the distances from intersections that apply to the number. And the thinking behind that was, again, based on the very rural nature of our state, that it would allow for public safety folks responding to emergency calls to have a better sense of the distances to where they were going. That's the deep history. The more recent history is that after that major change that affected virtually everybody in the state, there have been occasions when the folks who administer this program at the state notice a situation in a given community that needs to be addressed in order to come into compliance with that statewide program or statewide requirement. And recently we were contacted because of the little spur of Elm Street. So when you think about Elm Street, there's the part that is uncomplicated that comes down the bridge from Canal Street and past the parking lot and intersects with Flat Street and Frost Street. And then if you come through that intersection as you're heading north on Elm Street, there's the part that takes you up to Elliott Street. There's also that little spur that goes down from that hill that goes up to Elliott Street and takes you back down to Flat Street. And that's also called Elm Street. It doesn't have the little spur of it doesn't have any addresses and doesn't have any driveways. So there is zero impact to any property owners for the action that we're asking you to take tonight. But the state noticed that there's these we basically have a Y-shaped street that's Elm Street, and said you can't have those two legs of Elm Street both be Elm Street because it doesn't comply with the overall system. So you got to rename one of them. And it's clear that the one that should be renamed is the little spur rather than the major part of it that connects to the other Elm Street. And it seemed equally clear to us as staff that given the totality of these circumstances and the painful loss a couple of years back of Stanley Lynde, and the fact that he for so many years occupied the space nestled into the hill underneath this small street, that given that the state requires the town of Brattleboro to rename that little part of Elm Street, we're recommending that you approve this evening the renaming of it as Lynde Place.
Thank you for that summary. Yeah, I mean, Stanley touched so many lives in our community for so many years. He came before the board once when I was first on the board. I think it was about the flooding issue that had been coming up over and over again. And I remember chatting with him for quite a while there with a couple other board members. But I just want to also give a shout out to Chief Bacassi, Brian Bannon, Steve Barrett, and Wayne Stiers for advancing this idea, because it's just perfect in my opinion. And also Andrew Gruminski for a little help there too. So, board members?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Ian?
Do we have to put like stop signs or anything now that it's a new road? Does it change anything? No.
It'll function exactly as it always has, but it'll comply with the state's requirement that the two separate parts have two separate names.
Well, I'm disappointed it took 11 months, but I'm glad I'm finally getting to name a road as a select board member.
Lucky you.
Well,
Maybe you should make a motion.
Yeah, Ian, you should make the motion.
I will make the motion.
Awesome.
Oh, yes. Here it is. I, Ian Goodnow.
Watch out for the pronunciation. I don't want you to get it wrong.
I know.
Is it Lynde?
It's Lynde.
Oh, thank you, Lynde. Okay. I, Ian Goodnow, select board person, move to approve a change of name for a portion of Elm Street that forks to Flat Street to Lynde Place.
Thank you. And it's an easy mistake because most people just knew him as Stanley, of course. Ian has made a motion to approve a change of name for a portion of Elm Street that forks to Flat Street to Lynde Place. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous 4-0. All right, board. Congratulations. Sorry about the ugly sausages. What are you gonna do? Liz.
I move to adjourn.
Liz has moved to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Thank you, Peter. Thank you, staff. Thank you to all of the press and to Patrick in the background. Good night.
Good night.
Night. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris.